Chapter 256. There was a year when his own country hosted the Olympic Games, and that was the year when the whole country paid the most attention to sports. Now that it was another country's turn to host the Olympic Games, everyone's enthusiasm was mediocre. Many people did not even know that the Olympic Games were about to begin. Of course, popular sports such as football, basketball, volleyball, and so on did not lack attention. Equestrian was an unpopular sport, and very few people paid attention to it. A few official accounts released news of the expedition, but the comments were not very lively. It was not as lively as Shuai's Weibo. After all, he had accumulated a lot of fans during this period of time. It was not because he was handsome, nor was it because he was a genius horseman, nor was it because he went to a famous school. It was because he had two exceptionally cute horses. To be precise, he had one horse. However, he and his junior, Jia Sang, were so close that they would not leave each other. They often took turns taking care of the two horses. It was not an exaggeration to say that they had two horses. This was a big misunderstanding. It was because the two horses did not want to be separated. Otherwise, who would want to serve the troublesome Yulashanda? Just cleaning up his house was a very difficult task, not to mention helping him tidy his ponytail and comb his hair. The netizens knew that they were going to the expedition, and they sent their blessings and hugs, hoping that they would do well in the Olympic Games. Yulashanda was quite confident in himself. There was nothing to worry about in terms of skills. It was just a matter of how well he would perform. No one could say for sure. About 10 days before the competition, his life was very disciplined. He paid extra attention to his diet, and everything that might cause him to be in a bad state was forbidden, such as cream and popsicles. Otis had already promised him many things. After the competition, he would accompany him to eat until he was satisfied. Xiao Qishi, boohoo, you always coax me like this. But thinking about it, Ao Daisai had no other choice but to coax him like this. He wanted to participate in the Olympic Games, and he set the goal himself. Thinking about this, Xiao Qishi decided not to make things difficult for Ao Daisai. To be honest, the strong equestrian countries were surprised that China's team could qualify. Could this be the beginning of the rise of China's equestrian team? After all, in the past 2 years, the figures of China's riders had frequently appeared in everyone's sights. Qin was the #1 player in China. His ranking had not dropped. Perhaps he could go further through the Olympics. This was his coach's biggest wish before he retired. Fu Xiyu had performed perfectly in the past few matches. He was driven and steady. It was foreseeable that after Qin retired, he would be Qin and successor. Jia Sang, the equestrian genius who had suddenly risen to prominence, had made rapid progress in just 1 year. His performance had shocked the world, and he was a brave and resourceful rider. At the age of 16, his figure in all the major competitions around the world had become a role model for many young people. His white horse, Yulashanda, was even more eye-catching than him. She was the sweetheart of equestrian enthusiasts all over the world. Yulashanda had conquered a group of spectators with her unique charm. Now, he was going to represent his country in the Olympic Games. He believed that when his figure appeared on the screens of the people of various countries, people would be quite surprised. There was nothing to be nervous about in the competition. The most nervous moment should be when the competition was about to start. The other horses were very quiet on the first day. For the past 2 days, they had been resting most of the time. After watching the opening ceremony of the Olympics, only Yulashanda could not calm down. He kept thinking, what if he did not perform well? For example, if a banana peel suddenly appeared on the track. Well, that kind of thing would not appear on the track. It was just a metaphor. He could not accept the result of losing. That would be too big of a blow. Moreover, he only had one chance. After 4 years, he would retire. Xiao Qishi was anxious and restless. He walked back and forth in the stable. As long as he thought about the possibility of losing, he would be very nervous. Ao Daisai saw this and was very reluctant to see Yulashanda unhappy. It was already very late, but he still opened the door of the stable and asked Little Bear, "Do you want to go out and look at the stars?" Little Bear had said that if you could not sleep, you could count the stars. This method was very useful. Qiao Qixi then realized that he had affected other people. Not only Ao Daisai, but also his companions in the stable next door. It was too sinful. He simply left with Ao Daisai and went out for a run. His anxiety made him, who is usually very talkative, silent. Ao Daisai, don't think about the competition. Think about your life in the future. If he won an award in the Olympics, what would he do after that? Of course, Qiao Qixi had thought about this. At first, he was absent-minded, but later, he was immersed in the conversation. He wanted to take Ao Daisai to see the grasslands in summer. He wanted to run by the lake. The unfrozen lake in the highlands was too beautiful. There were many fish in it. He wanted to play around the world and visit his good friend Xiaoyin. If Xiaoyin was not busy with the competition, he could even take Xiaoyin to the grasslands as a guest. At that time, they would leave humans behind and go to the depths of the grassland alone. It was a remote area that humans had never been to before. They wanted to adventure there. Maybe they could even meet wild horses on the grasslands. They could live with the wild horses for a while. As for Jia Sang's farm work, what a joke. Did a world champion need to do farm work? Let Jia Sang raise another horse to do farm work. A world champion did not need to do farm work. Qiao Qixi said confidently and valiantly, as if he was now a noble world champion. Yes, he must become a world champion. Otherwise, all the farm work in Jia Sang's house would be his. Only by becoming a world champion would he have a bright future. Come on, Ao Daisai. I am full of confidence now. Qiao Qixi looked at Ao Daisai. In his big eyes, there seemed to be two small flames burning. They were terrifyingly bright. Ao Daisai kissed the white horse. In Ao Daisai's eyes, Yilashanda was the cutest and most powerful existence in the world. Yilashanda knew everything. Yilashanda had taught him wisdom and love. Because of Yilashanda, he had become the happiest creature in the world. With Ao Daisai's blessing, Qiao Qixi could finally sleep well. He did not have any dreams that night. He slept soundly until dawn. According to international practice, of course, he had to comb his hair for the competition. After all, many fans came to the competition because of his hairstyle. It was just a joke. In fact, the fans came to support him sincerely. For other popular sports, there was a row of beautiful 5-star red flags in the audience. Of course, equestrian had to have one as well. Yilashanda's braids were done very meticulously today. It made him look more mature and steady. His rider, Jia Sang, was also dressed like a little prince. When he sat on the horse, his posture was straight and his eyes were like torches. When the cameraman captured his face occasionally turning around, he could not help but exclaim. This young man's improvement was really fast. He remembered that when he first saw him last year, he was still young and inexperienced. Now, he was even more charismatic and very convincing. He seemed a little familiar. It was as if they had seen such a rider in the competition before. Who was it? The cameraman's eyes swept across the best seats in the special audience. Suddenly, he saw a straight figure. He suddenly remembered. The rider that Jia Sang looked like was his senior, Shuelai. When they sat on the horse, they looked exactly the same. No wonder they were from the same sect. Coach Lee, I really didn't want the cute little Jia Sang to become like this. Boo-hoo. But what could he do? This kid worshipped his senior very much. Whatever his senior said was right. Jia Sang and Yilashanda were about to compete. They were very nervous. Coach Lee wanted to talk to his partner, but when he saw Shuelai's calm face, he retracted his words. Instead, he said to Ao Daisai, Yilashanda is about to compete. Are you nervous? Feeling that Coach Lee's hand was about to touch his ear, Ao Daisai quickly moved to the side. Coach Lee was angry. Really, this kid's personality was the same as Shuelai's. He could not even touch him. Yilashanda was still the best. He did not get angry no matter how much he touched him. Coach Lee did not understand. It was because he always touched Yilashanda that Ao Daisai did not like him. As for the other coaches, they had already gone outside. Their riders had finished their competition and had to go down to make other preparations. In the third group, Jia Sang was the last to compete. The rider in front of him was the host country's rider. He performed well on his home ground. His final score was slightly better than Fu Siyu's. However, He was their best rider. His current ranking was still at the bottom. Compared to the strong equestrian countries, he was not good enough. Fu Siyu also knew that he had no chance of winning the award. However, he would still try his best in the following events to build a foundation for the team. China performed well. If he could hold on for the next 2 rounds, it would not be impossible for him to advance by 1 or 2 places. China's team did not have the ambition to win the championship. They only wanted to win steadily and pave the way for the future Chinese riders. The Japanese riders left the field. The staff went in to clean up the field. Coach Lee still wanted to say a few words to Jia Sang, so he ran over to him and told him about the current situation. The competitive riders had basically finished competing. If Jia Sang was ambitious, he would stare at the few riders who did not want to win. Then, he would know what he should do and how far he should go. Jia Sang nodded. They had made several plans before the competition. Now it seemed that he did not need to work too hard to win the points in the first round. The final scores of the top riders from the strong equestrian countries were expected. They did not exceed expectations. With the announcement, Yilashanda carried Jia Sang into the field. The moment he took a step, his whole horse's temperament immediately became reserved. He was proud, confident, happy, and enthusiastic. The Chinese audience in the auditorium was very excited. They kept waving the small red flags in their hands. However, they did not dare to make a sound to disturb the field. They just showed their excitement on their faces. The first part of the Olympic dressage was a set of specific movements, which had been practiced to perfection by the proud white horse. The judges couldn't find a single flaw to deduct points from its performance. His movements were very standard, perfect, and full of expression. In less than 2 minutes, everyone was optimistic about this horse. They guessed that he would get a good score in the end. Of course, Qiao Qishi swore that this was the competition he took the most seriously. He wanted to use all his energy to show the best side of himself to the people of the world. Every step he took, every jump he made, he did it without the slightest mistake, and he looked very relaxed. Just like that, he safely passed the set of movements. He believed that the judges had already begun to give him a score in their hearts. After a few transition movements, it was time for the self-choreography segment. People began to look forward to what kind of choreography they would perform. Would it be an elegant French rhythm or a passionate Brazilian style? Neither. As a Chinese horse, in the self-choreography segment, of course, they would be more inclined to the Chinese style. France had its elegance, Brazil had its passion, and China had a history of 5,000 years. The horse culture had a long history. When talking about history and the change of dynasties, people only remembered that a general success was built on thousands of bones. But very few people remembered the iron horses of ancient battlefields. War horses were also a very important part of history. Yilashanda and Jia Sang both thought of them. So today's self-choreography was created. The music played on the field. It was magnificent and made people feel as if they were on the battlefield. Yilashanda was very engrossed in the dance. The audience and judges were also very engrossed. No one knew what they thought of when they looked at this white horse. The audience probably did not think of anything. They just felt that the dance was very good. The music and dance were very captivating, and there was no shadow of other countries' culture. It was very good. After waiting for a long time, maybe 2 minutes, maybe 5 minutes, the judges gave the final result. People looked up and saw a 5-star red flag enter the rankings, taking first place. The scene was quiet for a second, and then there was a short burst of exclamations. The Chinese audience kept waving the small flags and then hugged each other excitedly. This first place was too surprising. The audience who did not know about the deduction of points felt that it was a miracle. Yilashanda looked at the rankings and did not excitedly rush to Ao Daisai, as usual. In front of the global audience, he needed to maintain his image. However, his small and fast swinging tail still revealed his excitement. The self-choreography just now was unconventional. He was so nervous. Luckily, the judges knew what was good and recognized his charisma and performance. His companions who were close to the field also heaved a sigh of relief. They were more professional than the audience and knew where the victory came from. First, Yulashanda's every movement was perfect. Even if the judges used a magnifying glass to look, they would not be able to find any details that would deduct points. Second, the self-choreography was also perfect. There was no reason to deduct points. Getting first place was not excessive at all. Yulashanda was amazing. The author has something to say. Xiao Xiao is intelligent. He knows how to do every movement perfectly. If he can't find anything that would deduct points, the first place is his. This is not considered cheating. Chapter 257. In addition to the equestrian competition, other sport competitions were also in full swing. The media had been sending the latest updates to the country. One day was not enough time for all the riders to complete their performances. The riders who had not entered the competition on the second day participated one by one. However, as Coach Lee had said, he felt that the remaining riders were not very competitive. When the news of Yulashanda temporarily topping the first of the 3 equestrian events spread back to the country, it became the first piece of good news and received a lot of attention. Everyone began to worry about what would happen on the second day, so the number of people paying attention to the equestrian competition increased. They might not know much about equestrian, but they really hoped that their country's riders would win. With a good start, Xiao Qishi was no longer nervous. On the second day, he and Ao Daisai watched the live broadcast of the Olympic Games for the whole day and felt very relaxed. As for the humans, they were nervously watching the changes in the competition. Fortunately, after the dressage competition ended, Yulashanda was still topping the list. On the third day, it was time for the riders and horses who had entered the competition the day before to rest. Yulashanda's group entered the competition again for the second steeplechase event. The Olympic standard was that the steeplechase was 160 centimeters high. It was believed that for all the participating riders and horses, this was a piece of cake. However, who could say for sure how they would perform on the spot? Not long after the competition started, various points were deducted. If the horse refused to jump, 4 points would be deducted. If it refused to jump twice, it would be eliminated. If the rider fell from the horse's back, it would be eliminated. It was fine for the people, but the horse was an uncontrollable factor. To be able to complete a perfect steeplechase, it really required the right time, place, and people. Qin had always been a very stable athlete. Before entering the competition today, he was very anxious. He felt that he did not perform well in the first round. If he continued to be stable in the second round, it was very likely that he would not be able to achieve his long-cherished wish of moving up the rankings. However, after entering the competition, he calmed down and did not think about anything else. First, he focused on running the race with no distractions. If he was in a good condition, he would try to increase his points. If he was not in a good condition, he would try to maintain the bottom. Fortunately, his partner did a great job today. During one of the laps, he seized an opportunity to take a short break and save them a lot of time. This made his coach give him a thumbs up and smile. However, he was still very nervous. He held his breath and looked at the next few obstacles. Only when he saw that there were no points deducted did he heave a sigh of relief. Today, the first 2 riders of the Chinese team performed well. After the race, Fu Siyu kept patting his head. Because the last 2 points were deducted, it wiped out the points he had worked so hard to get. He was so angry that he grumbled. However, his coach was very happy. That's enough. That's enough. Now, only Jia Sang and Yulashanda had not entered the arena. According to the rules, riders and horses could only visit the arena before the start of the race. Otherwise, it would be considered cheating. Therefore, they were waiting for their turn and could not visit the arena. After the rider in front of them left, they were allowed to enter for a tour, and then they left again to prepare. The route of the arena was like a 3D model that was built in their minds. Jia Sang immediately had an idea of how to take the route. Moreover, he tried to figure out Yulashanda's habits. He predicted that Yulashanda would walk this way, and then he quietly thought about how he should cooperate with him. Xiao Qishi also expected that Jia Sang would figure out his thoughts. He hoped that the other party would be mentally prepared for the thrill. The 4 limbs wrapped in the wrist guards did a rhythmic warm-up on the flat ground, showing a strong fighting spirit. The steeplechase was the time to test one's skills. Yolashanda only had one goal in mind: to increase points, increase points, increase points. He, who used to like to win by rubbing the lines, did not dare to be negligent in the Olympic arena. When he heard his name being announced, the white horse's ears trembled. Once again, he walked out with his head held high and stood at the entrance to wait. Alisanda took the opportunity of the second tour and went through the route again. This time, he was even more confident. The steeplechase was a race against time. He returned to the entrance and started again. From the first step he took, he was as fast as lightning. Yolashanda did not hesitate to rush to the first hurdle that he had anticipated and successfully passed it. The two of them silently praised each other. Their tacit understanding was 100 points. The audience was also amazed by this jump. It was too fast, and the goal was clear. Next, they guessed that like most riders, they would choose to go in a small circle and attack the second hurdle. However, that would be a waste of time. Yolashanda, who was very confident in himself, immediately rushed to the nearest hurdle as soon as he landed. 3 steps for steps, he jumped. This meant that he did not have time to run. It was almost equivalent to jumping on the spot. The 2 hurdles at such a close distance stunned the audience once again. What a bold rider and horse to choose such a route. After the white horse landed, he finally had time to adjust himself. He chose to go in a small circle, but his speed was still very fast. Which hurdle was he going to cross next? The one closest to him at the moment? Once again, the audience guessed wrongly which hurdle he would attack next. He did not attack the one closest to him because he would have to go in a circle to find the next hurdle. The white horse seemed to be playing a game of chess. He gave up on the nearest hurdle and ran to the top of the hurdle. He took down all 3 hurdles in one go. In the middle, he jumped on the spot again. Everyone's scalp went numb, and they thought it was impossible. Either he was a fake horse, or there was no gravity at the place where he was standing. How could he dare to jump without a proper run-up? This was completely illogical. Not only were the audience shocked, even Yolashanda's teammates and coach were staring blankly. They only had one thought in their minds. Yolashanda was giving it his all today. That's right. He was giving it his all. Everyone knew that Yolashanda was very talented, but he was lazy. He was so lazy that even the coach did not dare to place high hopes on him. Did he really not have the ability to win the previous races? No, he was just lazy. Today's amazing performance was completely unexpected. Yolashanda deserved a chicken drumstick for today's performance. 5 hurdles were completed in such a short time. There were only 5 hurdles left. Yolashanda was a little out of breath after 3 consecutive jumps. He walked in a circle and calmed his breathing. There were no more consecutive jumps. He had to make many small turns between the hurdles. Some were comparable to hairpin turns. He completed them smoothly, but because of the large movement, Jia Sang's body was unstable. He was about to jump in the next second, and there was a risk of falling. He could either slow down and wait for Jia Sang to adjust, or take the risk and continue jumping. The decision was made in an instant. Yolashanda hesitated for a moment. He felt Jia Sang suddenly tighten his grip on the horse's belly. It was like a signal to attack. Yolashanda did not think about anything else. He took advantage of the momentum and jumped. The whole horse leaped into the air. The young man on his back stuck close to him. His body made the most standard movement. The moment the horse's forelegs touched the ground, the rider had already adjusted himself and continued to attack the next hurdle. Jia Sang gritted his teeth and smiled. He was glad that he did not drag Yolashanda down. Yolashanda's performance today was indeed extraordinary. He almost could not keep up, but he was very excited. He felt his blood boiling. The audience was also very excited. They felt that the white horse and the rider were as wild as they were. No wonder they were young men. Shuelai was in a daze in the audience. His mood was also fluctuating. He suddenly felt very emotional. His junior brother was indeed his junior brother. He was not a copy of anyone else. This was the first time he admitted that he was arrogant, and he was convinced. Coach Lee laughed beside him. He seemed to be deliberately provoking him. Jia Sang is better than you. Unexpectedly, his proud student did not refute. Instead, he nodded in agreement. Or rather, he is more sincere than me. While they were talking, the field had reached the last jump. Everyone held their breaths and welcomed the perfect end of the competition. Yolashanda jumped. His forelegs touched the ground perfectly. His hind legs were raised high, and the rider was thrown into the air. The photographer was facing the rider in the air. He snapped a photo, and the end of the competition was captured in his photo. Yolashanda's four limbs touched the ground completely. The countdown ended. Jia Sang's back was drenched in sweat. He held onto his horse in disbelief. His face was written all over. Was I really the one who ran out just now? The results were out. He could not close his mouth for a long time. He rubbed the white horse's head and bent down to talk to his horse. But now, he was the focus of the audience. After all, he had obtained a shocking result. Coach Lee came forward. Like a father, he reached out and took Jia Sang. The skinny Jia Sang was only a little heavy. He was hugged by everyone until he was out of breath. However, his smile was still on his face. Yolashanda, who had a good result, was also touched by everyone. He was so annoyed. Boo-hoo. Where was his boyfriend? His boyfriend came quickly and chased these annoying humans away from Yolashanda. If they continued to touch him, the white would become black. When the results were announced, the other riders were in despair. How could they surpass him? What a joke. There was no way to surpass him. It would be more practical to change their plan of winning the championship to winning the second place. After the two races, Jia Sang and Yolashanda were confirmed as the champions. When the news spread back to China, it caused another wave of celebration. The first gold medal might be tomorrow. As the number of eliminated riders increased, the process of the competition accelerated. Tomorrow was the final battle. This meant that there was not much time to rest. After getting off the field, Yolashanda was immediately welcomed with a professional physical examination and muscle relaxation. Every time he was tickled, he would grimace. In the whole world, only Ao Daisai could hear the little bear saying, so ticklish, ha ha. After serving him, everyone told him to rest well or to date Ao Daisai. They told him to relax and maintain his condition. How much exercise did he have today? Yolashanda felt that he was not tired at all. He could play for a few more hours before resting. Once the humans left, the future world champion instructed his boyfriend to turn on the television. He wanted to watch the live broadcast of the Olympics and volleyball. Ao Daisai was like the humans. He hoped that Yolashanda could have a good rest and not just eat and play. Otherwise, what if he did not have the energy to participate in the competition tomorrow? However, Little Bear looked at him with pitiful eyes. It seemed difficult to refuse. Ao Daisai, I'm really not tired. Xiao Qishi leaned close to Ao Daisai and rubbed against him. Ao Daisai's neck was the most sensitive part. He rubbed against it when he acted coquettishly. Sure enough, Yolashanda achieved his goal very quickly. If possible, he wanted to eat a box of crushed ice cubes with cream. Can I? Just a small box. The familiar, insatiable behavior came again. Ao Daisai still felt that Yolashanda was really cute. No, it's okay if you don't put cream. Ao Daisai walked directly to the plug and used his actions to intimidate the demanding little cutie. It was as if he was saying, if you continue to ask for this and that, I'll pull the plug. Xiao Qishi immediately shut up. It was not easy to get such good results. It was okay if he could not eat cream and crushed ice cubes. He was not sad. At most, he would drink more water. The other horses must not be as troublesome as me. They are obedient, well-behaved, and diligent. Unlike me, who wants to eat good food after winning the competition. Although this is my only request, it is still a bit too much. No matter how healthy and energetic I am, it is not up to me to decide. Whether I can eat or not still depends on everyone's agreement. The future world champion said sarcastically, cream and crushed ice cubes, it's okay if you don't eat them. The author has something to say. Yolashanda, call the fairies in the comment section. They will crowdfund to buy you cream and crushed ice cubes. Chapter 258. The gluttonous little bear was too adorable. Ao Daisai decided that after Little Bear finished his last match tomorrow, he would ask Blondie to give him all his money to buy delicious food for Little Bear. Yes, if there were no accidents, tomorrow would be the last match of Yolashanda's professional career. From then on, he would not be able to compete again. Along with the intense sounds of the competition coming from the television, Xiao Qishi gradually immersed himself in it and forgot about the cream and ice. All his attention was focused on the women's volleyball team. Today was the quarterfinals. The women's volleyball team, who had always been valiant, made it to the quarterfinals without any mishaps. Satisfied, Xiao Qishi was finally willing to go to bed obediently. Tonight, he dreamed that he had won the championship. Then, he ran on the field with the 5-starred red flag draped over his shoulders. He was in high spirits and full of confidence. When he woke up, the corners of his mouth were wide open and he was drooling all over the floor. It was daybreak, and it was time to get up and prepare. Ao Daisai woke up very early. When he saw the sun rise outside the window, he lowered his head and nudged Yulashanda, who was drooling. "Hurry and get up." Yulashanda. His eyes were tightly shut and he was snoring softly. "If you don't get up now, you won't have time to comb your hair." Little Bear loved to show off, and Ao Daisai knew very well how to deal with him. Sure enough, when he heard that there was no time to comb his hair, Yulashanda swallowed his saliva and got up. His hair was in a loose braid. Jasang had helped him tie it up yesterday. In order to make him more comfortable, it was loose. During the competition, his hair was tied up very tightly, but it was actually not comfortable. After the competition, he had to untie it again or just let his hair down. However, Yulashanda could not do that. His hair would become a mess very quickly, and even his eyes would be covered. Only Ao Daisai kept her hair down because Ao Daisai would not run around. Xiao Qishi, who had just woken up, was still immersed in the excitement of winning the championship. When he was suddenly woken up by Ao Daisai, he more or less felt a little regretful that he had been interrupted when he had just arrived at the award ceremony. Wah wah wah. But it didn't matter. It was just a dream. How could the excitement and ecstasy in a dream compare to reality? As a result, Xiao Qishi woke up early in the morning full of fighting spirit. She couldn't wait to start the competition right away. But in reality, it wasn't that fast. He still had to wait when he arrived at the arena. Moreover, the sky had just turned bright, and he hadn't even cleaned his eyes yet. Not long after, Yulashanda, who had just finished combing his hair, heard a piece of good news. His good friend, Xiaoyin, had arrived. She had flown over from the other side of the world, right after she had finished her own competition, so that she could make it in time for his final match. Yulashanda was so happy that she danced with joy. What made her even happier was that Xiaoyin's performance in the past season had been quite good. With her current net worth, there was no need to worry about her retirement in the future. She could live very well after she retired. A scholar who had been away for 3 days had to be looked at in a different light. But so what? Xiaoyin still looked at Yulashanda and Ao Daisai with a submissive gaze. They would do whatever they were told to do. Yulashanda glanced at him. "All right, Big Brother Little Bear is going to win the championship. Be good and follow your Big Brother Bear." The last of the 3 equestrian events was the cross-country obstacle course. There were a total of 31 obstacles in the entire course. It was more challenging and tested the skills of the horses and riders. The weather wasn't very good today. It had been cloudy in the morning, and the sky had been filled with dark clouds. It looked like it was going to rain, but the competition couldn't be delayed. The riders could only rely on their luck. Even if it rained, they had to continue the competition, just like football. The coaches' faces were so gloomy that they were about to drip water. After all, they rarely trained in the rain. This kind of weather was really bad. Following that, the first few contestants managed to avoid the effects of the bad weather. Starting from a 6th contestant, it finally started to drizzle. Xiao Qishi was in the 17th position. While everyone was cursing the heavens, he didn't seem to care. Drizzling like this, he didn't care about it all. Back in the day, he lived in the open. Thunder, rain, lightning, all kinds of storms and waves. What was this drizzle to him? Similarly, he had never trained in the rain before. The coaches and riders of the China team were a little anxious. They prayed that the rain would stop soon. Next, it was Qin An's turn. Because of the rain, the organizers had temporarily set up a large shed at the side. It was enough for all the riders and horses to take shelter from the rain. When he went in, Yulashanda was a little reluctant. Why did he have to take shelter in such light rain? Wasn't it good to experience nature? But he still went in obediently because he was worried about his hairstyle. Xiaoyan was also very happy about the rain. He kept stepping on the wet grass with his hooves. Although it was only drizzling, as long as it rained for a long time, there would be water. As long as there was water, the grass would be slippery. Qin En's coach had already pulled him to a corner to explain the plan to him. It seemed that they were discussing how to deal with the slippery grass. The sixth rider had already gone up. At this time, the rain had just started, so he wasn't affected. Next, it was Qin En's turn to go up cautiously. At this time, there was no water on the grass. He finished the race in one breath. When he came out, he was all wet, but there was a satisfied expression on his face. He made an okay gesture to his coach. The coach smiled and clapped his hands. Good. There was hope for the rankings to move forward. Of course, the top 3 were still uncertain, unless the next few high-ranking riders made mistakes. When the 8th rider went up, the drizzle had already soaked the surface of the grass. This situation was called soft skin and hard bones. It greatly increased the chances of slippery. In order to prevent himself from falling off the back of the horse, the rider had to slow down and run very cautiously. Although it was a little unfair, the rain didn't stop the race. The riders behind could only admit that they were unlucky. But if it kept drizzling, it was actually quite fair. The first 6 riders were not very competitive. Therefore, winning the championship really required the right time, place, and people. The 8th rider was very skillful. In the process of crossing the obstacles, not many points were deducted. But because of his slow speed, points were deducted for exceeding the time limit. When he came down, he didn't look good. Next was a rider with a very high score. He seemed to be very afraid of the soft skin and hard bones. At the beginning of the race, he was very careful. Later on, when he felt that he could handle it, he began to let loose and became bolder. This rider was indeed a popular candidate for the championship. Even in bad weather, he fully demonstrated his superb equestrian skills and coordination with the horse. He didn't exceed the time limit and didn't make too many mistakes. This rider successfully finished the race. He rode on the slowed horse and waved to everyone with a smile. It was obvious that he was very satisfied with his performance just now. This was also a kind of encouragement for the riders waiting to go up. It proved that the weather didn't have a big impact on the race. As long as one's skills and condition were good enough, they could still get a good result. People applauded in admiration. They recognized this skilled rider from the bottom of their hearts. Indeed, he had done very well just now. The horsemen who were having headaches because of the bad weather had their hopes rekindled. It seemed that the field wasn't as bad as they thought. Fu Siyu was in 12th place. His horse was called 12. This might be a surprise from the organizers. This time, he got this ranking. It was impossible that the rain didn't have any impact on the field. When he came back from the race, China's equestrian champion Fu Siyu's biggest impression of the race was that it was very tiring. He controlled the horse so much that his muscles were almost stiff. Fortunately, 12 had a tacit understanding with him and listened to his instructions patiently the whole time. The result wasn't as good as he thought, but it wasn't bad either. At least, it was the kind of result that the coach wouldn't kick him. The coach just patted him on the shoulder and asked him to share some of his experience with Jia Sang. It was indeed very depressing to encounter such terrible weather. Fu Siyu was a cheerful young man. He didn't have much psychological burden at the moment. Knowing that Jia Sang was about to go on the field, he didn't have time to be emotional. He quickly grabbed Jia Sang to cram some experience on the rainy field. Jia Sang was also very nervous. He stood upright like a primary school student beside his senior and listened to him. But in the end, his face became distorted because the sound of the rain covered their voices. Fu Siyu looked up. His mouth opened into an O shape. He was thinking, is my experience still useful? Fortunately, it only rained for a while. When the organizers were considering whether to stop the race, the rain returned to its drizzling state. Since the race wasn't going to be stopped, the horsemen could only pray that their luck wasn't too bad. It would be best if it didn't rain halfway through the race. There weren't any horsemen that unlucky. Basically, they all maintained their normal performance. Of course, they felt that if it didn't rain, their results would undoubtedly be better. Before it was Yolashanda's turn, it had been drizzling. When he entered the field, it was also drizzling. Small drops of dew fell on his long eyelashes, sparkling and translucent. But sometimes luck was just that bad. Not long after Yolashanda and Jia Sang entered the field in high spirits, the rain suddenly became heavier. Everyone present was in an uproar. They felt that this situation was very difficult to handle. Yes, if everyone was drizzling, then it was fair. But if the rain was this heavy, then it was definitely not fair. The raindrops fell on his body. Yolashanda was stunned, but he felt that it didn't affect him much. Hence, the rain didn't affect his pace at all. Jia Sang didn't mind. He was a child who was used to being wild. If he stopped the race without permission, he would be disqualified unless the organizers issued a notice to stop the race. Everyone was waiting for the results. The organizers also felt that the race shouldn't continue. But the white horse on the field didn't seem to be affected at all. Its performance was quite strong. It made people feel that the suspension of the race was a form of contempt for it. Originally, loud noises were not allowed in the field. However, the white horse's advance in the rain ignited the enthusiasm of the crowd. It was as if at this moment, they had finally gotten rid of their complaints about the bad weather and were truly immersed in the race to enjoy it. People threw away their umbrellas and raincoats. They watched the race while enjoying the feeling of the rain falling on their bodies. The wet clothes clinging to their bodies were hot, just like their hearts that love sports. At this moment, not only were the horsemen and horses on the field exuding a mesmerizing charm, even the audience was not inferior. Each of their faces expressed their unique soul with their vivid expressions and words. Wasn't this the charm of sports? Therefore, no one wanted to stop the race from continuing. The white horse's blazing gallop made people forget about everything else. They were only focused on moving forward, as if their bodies and minds were following the white horse. Yolashanda had lived a pampered life for many years. Yes, to him, as long as he didn't have to hunt, it was a pampered life. But he didn't forget the sun and rain in the wild. When the wind and rain hit his body, it aroused his lofty sentiments. The galloping horse's hooves splashed white water everywhere. Every step he took was steady and powerful. There was no danger of him slipping. Jia Sang felt that Yolashanda was not affected. His heart calmed down. Yes, this is the way to run, Yolashanda. When we were young, we also ran like this on the grasslands. His wet hair stuck to his forehead messily. Jia Sang boldly followed Yolashanda's rhythm, bravely displaying his superb equestrian skills. The rain fell from the tip of his nose, down his chin, down his lean neck, and into his clothes. But he wasn't cold at all. Yolashanda, who was touching him, wasn't cold either. The heat from his body was enough to melt the rain. Once again, the white horse jumped over an obstacle. The white horse landed steadily with its rider. His hooves stepped into a puddle of water. Suddenly, mud flew out like a water arrow towards his horse's belly. No one thought that this white horse would be able to stay clean in such a muddy field. But this white horse did it. As long as he was fast enough, the mud couldn't keep up with him. Other than his limbs that were not touching the ground, Yolashanda didn't allow any mud to splash on his body. Under the heavy rain, his body remained clean and white. Every time he jumped over an obstacle, everyone cheered for his bravery and strength. Watching this horse jump over the hurdles in the rain was too enjoyable. It was so relaxed and casual. There was no worry that he couldn't jump over the hurdles. His companions, who had been worried about him in the beginning, were now excited. Jia Sang, you brat, hid your strength too well. So this is the true strength of Jia Sang and Yolashanda. They were just waiting for the Olympics to defeat those foreign riders. Shuelai frowned and smiled at the same time. He held a towel in his hand and was ready to rush out to find Jia Sang. But now wasn't the time. There was still the last section of the track. As they got closer to the end of the track, the road ahead became more and more muddy. Yolashanda could no longer keep his body clean. Every step he took splashed mud. He felt like a mud horse now. Victory was right in front of him. He didn't care about the rain. His determined and bloodshot eyes stared at the finish line without blinking. At this moment, even God couldn't stop his determination to win the championship. The white horse jumped over the last few hurdles with its hooves covered in mud. Perfect. 0 points deducted again. The sound of panting mixed with the sound of the horse's hooves and Jia Sang's heartbeat. They came to the last hurdle, the 31st hurdle. Jia Sang gripped the saddle so tightly that his veins were bulging and his knuckles were white. Just as he was ready, Yulashanda jumped again. This was the last jump of Yulashanda's career. The skinny young rider maintained a straight line with his horse in midair and quickly adjusted his posture when he landed. Raindrops fell from his eyelashes into the heavy rain. Yulashanda's hooves fell into the muddy pit, which had been trampled by countless horses. Everyone's hearts were in their mouths. This was the last second. The whole field seemed to have entered a state of vacuum. There was complete silence, until the white horse's front hooves stepped out of the muddy area and its hind legs stepped on the grass. It raised its head and ran out of the track in a very proud manner. At this point, he drew a perfect end to his career. The field was noisy again. Coach Lee clenched his fists and waved them above his head. It was done. It was done. Shuelai. Ao Daisai. Ha, it was done. When he turned around to look, they were nowhere to be seen. Shuelai had already rushed into the rain with a towel. His horse, Ao Daisai, ran faster than him to welcome their hero. Little Bear, the hero, came back with Jia Sang with bright eyes. We found that Ao Daisai was already there to welcome him. He slowed down and stood in front of Ao Daisai obediently. At this time, even if they didn't communicate, they understood each other completely. Are you cold? Ao Daisai asked after a long time. Then, he gently licked the rainwater around Little Bear's eyes. There were red streaks. If he continued to be in the rain, his eyes would get sick. The author has something to say. Little Bear, the hero, we can no longer say that he is lazy. He is not lazy at all. When you need him, he will definitely be the first to rush out. Chapter 259. I won the championship. The first thing Ao Daisai asked when he saw me was if I'm cold. All right, he wasn't a native human. He didn't care about the Olympics or the World Championship. He only cared about whether Little Bear's eyes would get sick. Xiao Qishi whimpered and leaned on her boyfriend. Although she wasn't cold, she was so tired. Thinking back, she wasn't sure if she could run again. Xiaoyin, who had been watching the competition, broke free from the rider's restraints and jogged over. When he saw his two good friends leaning against each other, he naively leaned his head against them. Yulashanda was stunned when he saw him. He couldn't help but laugh. Hey, congratulations, my friends. A large umbrella appeared above Shuelai and Jia Sang. It was Dai Wei. At this time, Yulashanda's results were broadcasted. Everyone stopped what they were doing and listened carefully. When they heard the shocking news of 0 points, everyone cheered and celebrated. They didn't seem to be surprised. Yulashanda, a white horse from China, was the champion. After hearing the news, Shuelai continued to dry Jia Sang's wet hair. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Finally, they couldn't help but hug each other. Dai Wei wanted to hug them too, but he realized that he couldn't squeeze in. So, he turned around and hugged his horse. Miraculously, the rain stopped after their race. However, the other riders couldn't beat the record of 0 points. Yulashanda and Jia Sang were surrounded by a group of people. They returned to their room to rest. The weather was still a little cold. Jia Sang and Yulashanda had to drink a bowl of ginger soup. Yulashanda felt that he didn't need it. However, Ao Daisai insisted on getting a bowl for him when he heard that drinking ginger soup wouldn't cause him to catch a cold. Boo-hoo. Therefore, he could only wrinkle his nose and drink a bowl. The ginger juice was so spicy that he kept sticking out his tongue to breathe. By the time all the riders had finished their races, the weather had cleared up. As expected, no one could surpass the team of Yulashanda and Jia Sang. They were informed to receive the award. Jia Sang could not stop smiling. He had already changed into a new set of clothes. At this moment, he was not as steady as he was when he was on horseback. Instead, he looked a little shy. Coach Lee passed Yulashanda's reins to Jia Sang. Jia Sang led the high-spirited white horse to the podium. With the blooming flowers and the heavy metal in his hands, Jia Sang was indescribably excited. He held the medal in front of Yolashanda and showed it to her. Gold medal. Yolashanda immediately opened her mouth and tried to bite it. Oh, it wasn't 1,000 feet gold. It was very hard. Of course, 1,000 feet gold was easy to deform, so the gold medal had to be made harder. After the award ceremony, China's national anthem was played on the field. 3 national flags slowly rose behind the winners of the 3 teams. The sun was shining brightly and the breeze was gentle. It was like a country that had risen from the bottom and prospered from then on. Although the rest of the China team members did not receive any awards, they were proud and sang the national anthem excitedly. No matter when or where, as long as the national anthem was played, they would sing with passion and tears in their eyes. After the national anthem was played and the photos were taken, it was time for the parade. Jia Sang and Yolashanda were both draped with the national flag. With them leading the way, they walked gracefully on the field. The audience on the side of the road was very enthusiastic. They kept reaching out their hands and shouting for Yolashanda to come closer. Living up to expectations, Yolashanda, who liked to join the fun, walked to the side in a reserved manner. Jia Sang, who was sitting on his horse, was also not stingy with shaking hands with the audience. The Chinese audience, who had followed the scene from thousands of miles away, were very excited when they saw Yolashanda riding a horse over. The other party touched Yolashanda and shook hands with Jia Sang. Finally, he picked up a corner of the national flag draped on Yolashanda's back and kissed it devoutly. At this moment, the national flag on his face and the national flag on Yolashanda's horse contrasted beautifully. The excited Yolashanda bit on the small national flag handed to her by the audience and started to dance dressage. It's here, it's here. His fame has arrived. This caused the audience to cheer endlessly. The audience who were familiar with this white horse all knew that every time he won the championship, he would dance a song on the field. He would celebrate for himself. At the end of the parade, it was free time. The other riders and horses were taking photos with their relatives and friends. The smug little bear was still dancing and patrolling the field until a black horse joined in. The 2 horses slowly walked together on the field that was bustling with noise. I got the gold medal, Ao Daisai. Yolashanda looked at Ao Daisai's handsome side profile with a silly smile. Under the afterglow of the setting sun, the other party's eyes were so gentle. In front of all the audience and friends, Ao Daisai, who had always doted on him, lowered his head and kissed the little spiral in between his eyebrows. Little bear is so amazing, Ao Daisai said sincerely. He was not coaxing the little cutie. From a moment he gained intelligence, he felt that Yolashanda was the smartest and most amazing existence in the world. At the same time, the news of China's equestrian team winning the gold medal spread back to China. Since the gold medal, good news came from the Olympic field. The people felt proud and continued to support the athletes who went to other countries. China's equestrian team successfully finished the competition. According to the original plan, they would return to China after the competition, regardless of whether they won the gold medal or not. This time, they brought home a gold medal. Everyone was very excited, but they were still organized and disciplined. They did what they were supposed to do. In the happy atmosphere, Jia Sang temporarily suppressed his thoughts until he returned to China. After a private dinner, which was considered a celebration, he told Coach Li his thoughts. Jia Sang wanted to retire because he had achieved his dream. Next, he wanted to achieve a new goal. Coach Li was very surprised because winning the Olympic championship was just the beginning. He thought that Jia Sang still had a long career ahead of him. He did not expect him to want to retire. He wanted to know what this kid's new goal was. Jia Sang shyly scratched his head. At this moment, he was no different from when he first arrived at the training base. He was still the grassland teenager who was full of hope for the future. Uncle Li, I want to go to school. After Jia Sang spoke, Coach Li no longer had any doubts. Go to school. Yes, Jia Sang was only 17 years old. If he did not go to school now, when would he go to school? He opened his arms and hugged this responsible and ambitious kid to show that he understood. Jia Sang, The world champion should not go to a bad school. Then, our next goal will be Qingbei. Are you confident? Coach Lee immediately turned into Coach Lee's man and put on a serious face. Good guy, he got into the role in a second. Okay. Jia Sang nodded. Next goal, Qingbei. Their conversation was heard by their friends and relatives around them. They all expressed their support. Little Bear Joe, who had eaten a lot of cream and crushed ice after the competition, was envious. He nudged Ao Daisai and said, Hey, Qingbei, do you know what it is? Jia Sang can go to Shanqing Bay. I'm so envious. Even though he had lived in human society for more than 10 years, he had always been in contact with things that interested Ao Daisai. He really did not know what Qingbei was. Was it a place? You can go too. Since Little Bear wanted to go, Ao Daisai thought, why not go? Xiao Qishi was waiting for him to say something like that. He shook his head and said, No, I've already been there. Back when I was a human, I scored 700 points in the college entrance examination. TSK, I was definitely a top student. But that was in the past. If you were to take the exam again, 300 points might not be enough. Sop. So Qingbei was really a place. Little Bear had been there when he was a human. It seemed that it was worth a visit. Otis also started to look forward to it. Coincidentally, it was the college entrance examination season. The next day, he saw a short video of Qingbei's campus on the television. The scenery was really good, and he was interested in it. He stared at it intently. Therefore, after they returned and ate to their fill, they set off while the humans were sleeping. Yulashanda was the one who unlocked the door. Yulashanda was also the one who came up with the idea. The wind was strong and the night was dark. The free horses roamed in all directions, and the date of their return was uncertain. Little Bear, little brother Xia, we horses have to live with attitude and awareness. When it is time to behave, we should behave. When it is time to behave, we should behave. When it is time to behave, we should behave. When it is time to behave, we should behave. When it is time to behave, we should behave. Chapter 260. They drank a lot of Highland barley wine before going to bed. When the horses ran away, they were unconscious. When they woke up and found that the 3 horses were missing, it was already 10 in the morning the next day. Jia Sang knew that Yulashanda would open the door by herself, but she would never run around. When he saw that they were not in the stable, he thought that they were just playing nearby. Who knew that he could not find them after searching around the area alone? Only then did he realize that the situation was serious. Jia Sang went back to tell his senior brother and his friend Dai Wei. They immediately woke up from their drunken stupor and got up to search together. But it was all in vain. After so long, they could not even find the footprints of the 3 horses. Jia Sang blamed himself. If it was his own horse that ran away, it would be fine. But now, even Ao Daisai and Xia Yin were missing. It was obvious who was to blame. It must be Yulashanda who wanted to play. She brought her friends out of the house. How bold. It was all because they had let Yulashanda have too much freedom and spoiled her. Shualai was fine. Since they could not find the horses, he patted Jia Sang's shoulder and said, Forget it. Don't worry too much. They are very smart. They won't be taken advantage of. They will probably come back by themselves when they have enough fun. Dai Wei was the most confused. He could not accept it. How did his beloved horse disappear when he woke up? He heard that Yulashanda would open the door by herself and go out to play. This time, she probably brought her friends out to play. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. But fortunately, after he calmed down, he suddenly remembered that his horse had a GPS chip. That was why the 3 naughty horses were not lost. Yes, Jia Sang. Don't worry. Let's go back and sleep. We will look for them after we have enough sleep. Dai Wei told everyone about the GPS chip. Everyone immediately heaved a sigh of relief. The 3 horsemen who were not too worried went back to sleep. When they woke up again and found that the 3 horses were still not back, they concluded that the horses had gone far away and would not be back for a while. Therefore, the 3 humans methodically prepared for the tracking operation. First, they prepared vehicles, water, and food to enter the grassland. Then, they prepared a drone. Tracking a runaway horse was quite a new and exciting thing. Shuai mentioned it on his social media account and promised to report the situation at any time. The netizens were stunned. More of them were worried. Wouldn't this be very dangerous? Later on, he remembered that Yelishanda was a native of the grasslands. With him leading the way, there should be no problem as long as they did not meet any bad people with evil intentions. Xiao Qixi, who was leading her partner and good friend deep into the grassland, thought the same. Finally, on the morning of the second day, they successfully released the drone. Soon, the video of the 3 horses appeared on their device. They saw 3 handsome horses, one black, one white, and one brown, walking side by side on the grassland. They took a picture of the beautiful scenery. They finally found them. On one hand, people were glad that the 3 horses were fine. On the other hand, they were angry. Obviously, the horses were having a lot of fun and showed no signs of wanting to go home. But it was okay. Don't panic when something happens. Take a picture first. Shuai informed them that he had found the horses and then posted a picture of the 3 horses in the wild and threatened to teach them a lesson when he caught them. How could that be? The netizens began to speak for their cute 3 horses. It's in the nature of animals to love freedom. Also, let them play on the grassland. The vast grassland is the home of horses. Also, it's not easy to be a professional horse racer QAQ. I'm willing to give them 10 pounds of meat in exchange for a month of traveling in the grassland. Shuai was just saying it. Other than using the drone, they could not get close to the 3 horses because there were many terrains on the grassland that cars could not pass. Even if they could, it would be difficult to catch up. So what if they caught up? If the horses did not want to stop, could they throw a rope? Running with 2 legs was even more impractical. A human could not run faster than a horse. Therefore, they could not do anything to the 3 horses. They could only pray that they had enough fun and would go home with them. Yelishanda and Ao Daisai were not too sensitive to drones. Soon, they realized that there was something strange in the sky. It was a drone. They were being watched. How could that be? After discussing with Otis for a while, they started running. Xiaoyin did not know what was going on, but since his friends were running, he followed them. The 3 horses ran on the grassland to avoid the drone. The human sneered. Stupid horses, you know nothing about the power of technology. No matter how fast a horse can run, it can't be faster than a high-tech product. Looking at the drone that was chasing after them, Xiao Qixi sneered. He said to Ao Daisai fiercely, "Think of a way to destroy this drone. What ideas do you have?" Ao Daisai looked around as he ran. The terrain here was more open, and the surroundings were bare. They could not do it in a short period of time. However, there were large and small mountains in front of them. Perhaps there was a chance. He took the lead and ran there. This action made Jia Sang break out in cold sweat. He hurriedly stopped Shuai. "Don't chase anymore. In front of us is the canyon." Shuai was stunned. His heart skipped a beat. However, the horses were already frightened. Even if they did not catch up, the other party would not stop. Chapter 261. Humans had a natural fear of canyons, but beasts did not. When Ao Daisai saw a dark canyon, he might feel a natural sense of intimacy. As for Yelishanda, he only insisted that he had a human soul when necessary. After living as an animal for so many years, he was very flexible about his position. It was just a dark canyon. When he was a dinosaur, he used to live in a canyon. What was there to be afraid of? Xiaoyin grew up on a farm. The most rugged terrain he had ever been to was his friend's hometown, which was here. When he saw the dark entrance to the canyon, he slowed down a little. His innocent eyes seemed to say, "Dear friends, are we really going in?" But when he saw that his companions did not stop, he quickly threw away his hesitation and followed closely behind the 2 horses. On the grassland, the wind was always howling all year round. When the wind blew through this rugged terrain, it would make a very terrifying sound like the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves. Perhaps this was the reason why Xia-yin hesitated. But it did not matter. As long as he saw the black and white figures in front of him, he felt safe. He even felt a little bit of anticipation for the road ahead. Why enter the canyon? Because they could take down the drones inside, as long as the drones dared to come in. Ao Daisai was in charge of leading the way. Yilashanda helped to keep an eye on the surroundings. He also took care of Xia-yin, who was living in the wild for the first time, for fear that he would lose track of them. Fortunately, Xia-yin was strong and smart. He followed closely. They slowly walked into the entrance of the canyon. The tall cliffs blocked the sunlight on both sides, leaving only a line of sky above them. The wind here was more gentle and shrill. Not long after they walked forward, they saw the bones of animals on the ground. Ao Daisai and Yilashanda both recognized that it was the skeleton of a yak. It had a pair of curved horns. It looked like it had been here for many years. Horses were very intelligent animals. They had empathy. When Xia-yin passed by the skeleton, he also lowered his head and sniffed it. His eyes looked a little sympathetic. Yilashanda turned back to comfort him. Then everyone wagged their tails and continued to move forward cautiously. The ground was full of potholes and gravel. The sound of the hooves of the three horses trampling on the ground was quickly covered by the sound of the wind. The drone naturally followed, but it was very difficult to drive in the canyon. From the images sent back, it could be seen that the drone was in danger. What caught their attention was not only the drone situation, but also the scene in the canyon. It turned out that Jia Sang's story was true. The canyon was really a graveyard for many animals. The three young men sucked in a breath of cold air. It seemed that this place was really dangerous. They secretly regretted it. Just as they expected, the drone crashed when it came here. With a careless collision, the high-tech product suddenly fell from the sky. The three horses heard the sound of something falling and wanted to look back. However, they were now passing through a very narrow road. They couldn't see what was happening behind them. They only knew that the drone was finally gone. Then the problem was the drone crashed. Should the team continue to move forward or go back the way they came? Commander-in-Chief AO, Chief of Staff Xiao, and CEO Xia had to discuss it. On the other side of the monitor, the image suddenly disappeared. Shuelai gritted his teeth and cursed. This news was too bad. They only had one drone. They had originally planned to bring it to shoot the grassland scenery. Now that it crashed, it was gone. Just as everyone was feeling uneasy, they suddenly heard Dai Wei say, "Hey, look, they stopped." At that time, everyone understood that the three horses entered the canyon to avoid the drone. Now that the drone had crashed, they might be watching. Hateful horse. As for the question of whether to move forward or retreat, in the end, the calm Ao Daisai said, "You guys stay here and don't move. I'll go to the front and take a look." He felt that they were not far from the exit. Maybe there was no need to go back. Xiao Qishi obediently waited with Xia-yin. At the critical moment, their commander-in-chief, Ao, could still act as a scout. Xia-yin did not lose anything by following them on this trip. Xiao Qishi stood there thinking. Suddenly, he heard a slight movement. It seemed to be coming from the stone wall. The two horses looked up, but they could not see anything. They could only vaguely feel that there was something in the canyon. What could it be? Xiao Qishi frowned. He actually had an answer in his heart. The most dangerous beast on the grassland was the wolf. He was not afraid. The problem was that this place was very narrow. He could not use his skills. If a pack of wolves surrounded him, he would not be able to take care of himself. Alarm bells rang in his heart. The white horse led the light brown horse forward. It was not to find Ao Daisai, but to find a place where they could use their skills. As they walked, they were vigilant of their surroundings. The smart Xia-yin had already noticed from Yilashanda's reaction that there might be something dangerous around them. He had never experienced such an exciting life. He was a little uneasy, but he acted very bravely. Yilashanda, as they walked, shouted to encourage Xia-yin. "Xia-yin, don't be afraid. The worst thing is a wolf." When your little bear was in the North Pole, he did not even look at a wolf when he met one. What's more, they had Ao Daisai. That was the real existence that could kill a wolf without batting an eye. There was no way anyone would dare to rob them. Ao Daisai did not go far. He, who had gone forward to survey the terrain, heard little bears nagging. He was not bragging about their past achievements. That was not the main point. The main point was, were they in danger? Little bear, did you meet a wolf? Ao Daisai turned around, as if he was ready to run back at any time. No, I didn't see a single wolf hair. Xiao Qishi stopped bragging and answered Ao Daisai. It's broad daylight now. Even if there were wolves, they wouldn't dare to come out. Yes, Ao Daisai was slightly relieved. He looked up at the sky. In fact, it was not far away from nightfall. They had not explored the road ahead, but they could not waste any more time. Ao Daisai waited for the two horses to catch up and then continued to move forward. He and Yulashanda were not afraid of challenges. The reason why they were thinking so much was for Xiayin. Yulashanda felt that it was too boring to stay in an ordinary environment all day long. They should bravely move forward and let the innocent little Xiayin see the world. Other than the narrow passage, the canyon was very spacious. There was even a stream passing by. They were grateful to drink enough water. It seemed that if they followed the stream, which was getting wider and wider, they would reach a flat grassland. Animals rarely stepped on the stream, and the grass was very rich. The natural and clean environment was very much in line with Yulashanda's expectations for this trip to the grassland. The three horses leisurely ate the grass by the stream. They did not notice that there were countless pairs of green eyes hidden on the cliffs on both sides, silently spying on them. There was still a trace of afterglow in the sky. The hungry beasts seemed to be waiting for the night to come. Before that, they would try their best to hide their existence. The black horse and the white horse ate side by side. As they ate, their mouths gradually moved closer to each other, as if they had their eyes on the same piece of grass. The black horse, which usually gave way to its partner, used the cover of the twilight to kiss the little cutie who was fighting for the grass with it. Xiao Qishi did not hide. It was not easy for the sky to turn dark. It was not too much for them to kiss behind Xiaoyin's back, right? When Xiaoyin falls asleep later, shall we go on a date? After a while, Xiao Qishi made a rare invitation. He knew that Ao Daisai would be very happy. As expected, Ao Daisai, who was invited, even in the dark, his eyes were as bright as a lake under the moonlight. However, he bit Yulashanda's ear and restrained himself by shaking his head. Can't you see those green eyes? There would be intense activities tonight, but it would not be a date. The author has something to say. The seal killer, President Ao, has not used force for a long time. Chapter 262. When night fell, there were some hidden green eyes hidden in the caves on both sides of the cliffs, which were particularly frightening. After Ao Daisai's reminder, Xiao Qishi also felt that this was not a good place for a date, so they had no choice but to postpone it. As for the wolves hiding in the dark, they were probably the reason why the animals that entered the canyon were killed. Along the way, they saw many skeletons of animals, so they were more and more certain that there were wolves in the canyon. However, Xiao Qishi felt that wolves were very cautious and cunning animals. They knew how to judge the situation and would not attack rashly if they were not fully confident. He and Ao Daisai were not ordinary horses. Just by standing here, they could scare off many naturally sensitive animals. Xiao Qishi was afraid that they would target Xiaoyin, who had no fighting experience. After considering all aspects, he had to call out to his friends who were eating happily. It was time for them to leave. They could not relax until they left the canyon. Are we leaving? Xiaoyin seemed reluctant to give up the clear and sweet water that flowed down from the mountain and the rich water plants here. He lowered his head and ate a few mouthfuls before reluctantly lifting his horse's hooves and setting off. As they moved forward at night, they changed their formation. They were afraid that Xiaoyin would be attacked by the wolves at the back, so they let him walk in the middle. Under the watchful eyes of countless tigers, Ao Daisai instinctively released his aura. His body was full of warning, as if he would kill the wolves if they dared to charge at him. The wolves probably also felt that these three horses were different from the ones they had seen before. They were not very confident, so they did not move. However, this hesitation would fade sooner or later. The hungry wolves would not just watch their prey leave. The strong alpha wolf led a few wolves to the front to block them, while the rest of the wolves flanked them from behind. There were indeed many wolves hiding in the cave, but some were old wolves, some were female wolves, some were young wolves, and some were injured. Therefore, only a part of the wolves could go out to hunt. Seeing the green eyes in front of them, A.O. Daisai stopped, but not because he was afraid. He stood in front of the group. However, he did not know that there were people behind him as well. Feeling a few pairs of eyes staring at him, Xiao Qishi sighed softly. He did not want to fight. Everyone was working hard to make a living, so there was no need to make a big fuss. Can't we skip this meal of horse meat tonight? Before the wolves flanked them, Xiao Qishi made a prompt decision. A.O. Daisai, don't fight with the wolves. Let's break out of the encirclement. Xiaoyin did not have fighting skills, but it did not matter. They ran fast, and breaking out of the encirclement was the best way. After receiving Xiao Qishi's suggestion, A.O. Daisai immediately agreed. As soon as he moved, Xiao Qishi immediately bumped Xiaoyin's buttocks. Startled, Xiaoyin stood up and screamed, breaking the silence of the night. At this time, he instinctively ran and followed A.O. Daisai closely. The prey ran away in panic. The wolves flanking them swarmed forward, making terrifying sounds in their throats as if they were trying to scare their prey. The leading wolf fiercely pounced on the black horse. In the darkness, the black horse's figure was faintly discernible. Feeling a strong gust of wind, he also fiercely raised his hooves and knocked away the hungry wolf that was sneakily attacking him. At this time, another wolf pounced on it. It was too late to kick it away. A.O. Daisai, who was born a polar bear, immediately used his teeth. Even if he did not have fangs and claws in this life, he had amazing strength. Before the hungry wolf's fangs could bite him, A.O. Daisai lowered his head and clamped the back of the wolf's neck, then threw it out with force. The horse's muscular neck was very strong, and the wolf that was only a few kilograms was immediately thrown far away. A.O. Daisai, don't focus on fighting. Let's not fight. Let's go. Xiao Qishi reminded him again. He was being chased by wolves. If they did not leave now, they would have to stay and fight. However, he really did not want to have any casualties. Although these wolves were evil, there might be cubs in the cave that needed to be raised. As if responding to Xiao Qishi's call, Xiaoyin overtook A.O. Daisai, who had stopped, and quickly rushed to the front. A wolf that wanted to attack him was almost trampled by his hooves. Hearing Little Cutie's warning, A.O. Daisai did not continue to fight and turned around to leave. They were all racehorses, so they ran very fast. Like 3 bolts of lightning, they quickly left the wolves behind. The wolves chased them relentlessly, as if they were unwilling to give up the meat that was about to reach their mouths. Xiao Qishi thought to himself, we are professional racehorses, brothers. Your decision is a mistake. The 3 racehorses, who had not been sprinting for a few days, ran faster and faster on the natural track. They quickly adapted to this unique chase game. A.O. Daisai overtook Xiaoyin and became the leader. After all, he thought that he was more familiar with choosing the route. If the stupid, ordinary horse stepped into a pit, it would risk breaking its leg. The 3 racehorses formed a straight line and ran out of the canyon at a very fast speed. The wolves behind them were confused. In the end, they could only give up reluctantly. They had chased wild horses on the grassland before, but they had never run so fast. Bad luck. Out of the canyon, the dark blue sky dotted with stars seemed to be just above their heads. It was a vast open space. In order to get away from the wolves, they ran for a while until they could not run anymore. Xiao Qishi was so tired that he did not even have the strength to swing his tail. He immediately laid down on the grass and closed his eyes to rest on the small slope. TSK, if I had known, I would have just fought. Fighting would not be so tiring. The light brown horse, who had experienced this for the first time, panted. Its tail swayed gently behind him, and it seemed to be a little excited. He had probably come back to his senses and realized that he had just escaped the attack of a group of ferocious beasts. How amazing was that? After confirming that there were no wolves here, A.O. Daisai also lay down beside Yolashanda to rest. If there were any humans who could see them at this time, they would see the 3 horses lying on the grass carelessly. Because it had been too long since he had run so fast, Yolashanda woke up the next day and felt pain all over his body. He did not want to get up, but he was hungry, so he just lay there and ate the grass beside his mouth. After eating one piece of grass, he wriggled to another piece of grass. Just like that, he was half full. When they encountered a landslide, Yolashanda slid down on his side. Very good. He could change to another place to eat grass. Xiayin watched with interest, but he was still a good boy. He did not think that he could eat grass in such a strange position like Yolashanda. Ao Daisai was already used to this. He looked at the cute little bear and then looked up at the snowy mountains in the distance. He only felt that life was beautiful. After defeating the drones and getting rid of the humans, the 3 horses strolled leisurely on the green grass. But in fact, this place was not far from where the herdsman lived. As they walked, they met unfamiliar herdsmen. This herdsman was rearing white yaks. From afar, they looked like sheep. The herdsmen were sitting on horseback and were stunned when they saw the 3 horses pass by. These 3 horses did not have saddles or reins. They looked like wild horses, but they cannot be wild horses. The herdsman's eyes were very sharp. He could tell at a glance that these 3 horses were expensive. They must have been reared by someone. The herdsman wanted to urge the horses forward to take a closer look. He also thought kindly that some herdsmen might have lost their horses and might be worried. The herdsman's guess was right. Someone had lost their horses and was now worried. Unfortunately, in the blink of an eye, the 3 horses were gone. The 3 young men who had lost their drones understood that the 3 rebellious horses did not want them to follow them, so they had no choice but to give up on using their drones. Maybe the horses just wanted to go out to play and would return home when the time was up. Jia Sang could only comfort his friends. He said that Yolashanda had a lot of bad records and used to go out to play by himself. Actually, there was no need to worry that the horses would not return. The other 2 shrugged and could only wait patiently. Since they could not find the horses, they would plan their own trip. Anyway, they had brought food and equipment. It would be a pity if they did not go for a walk. Hence, the group split into 2 groups and started their trip to the grassland. Jia Sang and his group walked along the road. When they saw beautiful scenery, they would get off to enjoy the scenery. Occasionally, they would go to the herdsmen's houses as guests. The herdsmen welcomed them very warmly and invited them to drink and eat. On the vast grassland, there was not a single guest all year round. It was not easy to catch 3 young men. The enthusiastic grannies on the grassland could not wait for them to stay. The herdsman's sheep gave birth to a little lamb. The big boys took turns to hold the little lamb and take pictures. Everyone was smiling brightly. Dai Wei and Shuelai were not used to drinking sheep's milk, so they declined the offer of sheep's milk. Moreover, how could they bear to snatch breast milk from the little lamb? The humans were having fun, and the horses were also having fun. They went deep into the grassland and finally met a herd of wild horses in the areas that were rarely visited by people. The 3 wandering racehorses shamelessly joined the herd of wild horses. They changed from a solo trip to a group trip. Xiayin, who was obedient and shy when they first left, had become much more cheerful after these days. His extraordinary demeanor quickly attracted the wild horse girl. When the other party took the initiative to contact him, Xiayin was a little overwhelmed. He subconsciously looked for his friends, only to find that his 2 friends were enjoying the scenery together under a tree. Xiayin had to face it himself. Perhaps he was a little moved. The warm and generous wild horse girl was Juju bred and very beautiful. But he did not belong here. Sooner or later, he would leave here. However, Xiayin still became friends with the wild horse girl. They would play together. Yolashanda found that Xiayin had made new friends and was very happy for him. It was very awkward to travel with 3 horses, but it was different with 4 horses. When they could not help but want to be alone, Xiayin would not be left out. The only worry was that when they were about to leave the herd of wild horses, would the new friends be sad because of parting? On an ordinary morning, the herd of wild horses was somehow frightened. Dozens of horses all ran in one direction. What's going on? I'll go down and take a look. Xiao Qixi had been standing on a high place to watch the sunrise with Ao Daisai. Seeing this, she immediately rushed down to see the source of the shock. Was an attack by wild animals? Xiao Qixi knew that it was a herd of yaks that had been frightened first and were running wildly. There were at least hundreds of yaks. If they were caught up, they would be in danger of being trampled. For a moment, cold sweat came down because there were many old and young horses in the herd. Xiao Qixi immediately contacted Ao Daisai. Hurry up, go to the front, and lead the way. There are hundreds of mad yaks running behind us. The herdsmen were probably anxious now. They did not know when they started running and where they came from. Ao Daisai received the message and did not hesitate. Okay, take care of yourself. A black horse rushed down the grassy slope and ran at a very fast speed along the edge of the herd. There was already a wild horse king leading the herd, but he could not see the situation behind him and could only run forward blindly. After Ao Daisai became the leader, he led the whole herd to the side and retreated. At this time, the herd of wild horses was surging with smoke. It was a spectacular scene. Yilashanda, who came with the yaks, shouted, "Go away! The yaks are coming." At this time, the herd of wild horses successfully avoided the yaks and gradually stopped at the side. The frightened yaks ran in a straight line. Yilashanda stopped and waited. When the herd of yaks passed by, he saw Ao Daisai standing on the opposite side, leading the herd. Yay, perfect escape. The author has something to say. There's also a second update today. The handsome horse will be finished in 5 days. I will try my best to finish the second update. Chapter 263. Yilashanda, who was very proud that he had solved a crisis, waited for the billowing dust to dissipate a little and immediately ran to the opposite side to meet up with the rest of the group. Worried about his Ao Daisai, she licked his cute face that was covered in dust. In a while, the herders should be coming over, so they had to leave quickly. It wasn't that they didn't trust humans, but they had to be vigilant. The number of wild horses in the grasslands was getting fewer and fewer, and the living environment was very harsh. It was not easy for this herd of wild horses to have such a large number. The 3 strong racehorses guarded the wild horses' surroundings and migrated with the herd. Although this was not their responsibility, they didn't know why they couldn't help but take the initiative to do so. Looking at Ao Daisai leading the way in front, Yilashanda felt warm in his heart. He suddenly felt very touched, because he was the one who changed Ao Daisai. If he didn't like to meddle in other people's business, Ao Daisai would have been a lone wild horse. But now, the other party took the responsibility and led the herd of wild horses to a better place to settle down. Xiaoyin guarded the left side of the herd of wild horses, and his friend, Red Date, followed him. Her bright eyes seemed to be filled with worship. When the herd of wild horses was in a mess, Red Date found that this different light brown male horse was very calm. He skillfully handled the collision, and then led her to the edge of the herd. Later, he helped the horses that had lost their direction in the herd to return to the right path. Of course, Xiaoyin was a professional racehorse. He had a stable temperament and first-class running skills, so naturally, he wouldn't be easily frightened like the wild horses. Yilashanda guarded the right side and the back of the herd of wild horses and accompanied the herd of wild horses to a better place to settle down. The reason for the decline of wild horses and wild yaks was the harsh living environment and the despicable actions of poachers. In the early years, the management was not strict enough, and large numbers of wild animals died on the grasslands every day. In recent years, the management was stricter, but the number of wild animals had long been reduced, and it would not be prosperous for a while. A colorful pony appeared beside Yilashanda. It seemed to be very curious about Yilashanda as it wagged its tail. Yilashanda suddenly noticed the existence of this little fellow. At first, he was stunned, but then he was overjoyed. He laughed like a wretched uncle. "Oh, little pony, how are you? How old are you?" It was impossible for them to converse. According to Yilashanda's experience with horses, little flower horses were at most 3 months old. They were at the age where they could take care of themselves. He looked around, and sure enough, the foal's parents weren't following him. They probably only came when they heard their child's cries when they were in danger. Horses in the wild were paired freely. Hence, there were often spotted ponies. It was rare to see them in a competition, but Yelashanda felt that ponies were very beautiful, just like elves. Yelashanda, who loved little flower horses, led them to run rhythmically. This was his unique skill, which could help little flower horses find a more relaxed way to run. It was very difficult for an adult horse to change its habits in a short time. However, it was different for a 3-month-old pony. Its learning ability was very strong. Yelashanda, who was casually doing things that were within his ability, often had a myriad of thoughts. For example, now he was thinking whether a wild horse's life was happier or a horse that was raised by someone was happier. Some people would definitely say, long live freedom. No matter how it is outside, at least you can make your own decisions. That was true, but the price of freedom was very, very high. Every minute and every second of a wild animal's life was very difficult. The climate was difficult for them, and the environment was difficult for them. They had to hide from humans and other hunters. Illness and injury meant death. Wild animals often had shorter lives. Basically, they did not have a retirement life after middle age. Physical decline meant that they lost competitiveness. Animals that were raised were not necessarily happy. Thinking about it this way, it was very difficult for every life to survive in this world. Yelashanda had always thought that he was very lucky. He had not encountered too many difficulties along the way. But in fact, when he thought about it, he had worked hard to overcome many difficulties to get to where he was today. It was precisely because Alexander himself knew that life was not easy that he empathized with every living creature in this world. As long as it was within his means, he would treat everyone he met with kindness. After staying on the grassland for 10 days, Shwelai and the others found that the 3 horses that had gone out to play were still going deeper into the grassland. There was no sign that they were going to turn back. However, they had to go back. The food accompanying them was getting less and less. If they wanted to continue, they could only hunt, but they did not want to do that. Jacques Sang had to hurry up and study, so they had to go back. Dai Wei was worried about the horses, but at the same time, he was reluctant to leave the grassland. He had a lot of fun these 10 days. When he heard that his 2 friends had to go back for tuition, he was very disappointed. He could not participate in the competition without horses, and his friends did not have time to accompany him on a trip. Did he have to sign up for classes too? After resting for a few days, many competition organizers called Dai Wei to invite him to participate in the competition. Dai Wei had to tell them the truth. It's not that I don't want to participate, it's that I don't have the conditions to do so. What's the reason? Let's not talk about it. It's just tears. He still didn't know what his future would be like. Fortunately, Xia-In was not the only one who had gone missing. Ao Daisai's expensive horse had also gone missing. There was also the world champion with them. He did not seem to be the most miserable one. The 3 riders believed that the 3 horses would go home when they were tired of playing. They could only try to forget about it for the time being and do what they were supposed to do. They would pretend that they had never raised horses. In fact, the humble riders missed their horses every day. Unfortunately, the wild horses on the grassland never thought of them. Along the way, Ao Daisai, who was very sensitive to the environment, led the wild horses to the foot of the snow mountain. In summer, the foot of the snow mountain was green. The temperature was neither high nor low. The environment was beautiful and livable. The snow melted into streams and flowed down from the mountain, nourishing the grass that grew freely. The wild horses ran happily to the water. The cool snow water quenched their thirst and was sweet. This was undoubtedly the best place to escape from the heat in summer. Yelashanda also liked this place very much. He had a flash of inspiration. He put his mouth on the ground, as if he was looking for something in the grass. His strange actions finally attracted Ao Daisai's attention. He walked over slowly and asked him curiously, "What are you looking for?" Yelashanda said, "I'm looking for caterpillar fungus. It's a very expensive herb. A small handful can be sold for hundreds of yuan." When he spoke, his mouth was still on the ground, and he did not look at Ao Daisai at all. It turned out that it was something related to money. Ao Daisai had always been taught by Yolashanda that his family was very poor. If he did not have money, he would live a miserable life. So as long as there was money, he would not let it go. Suddenly, he heard Yolashanda shout, "Found it! Ao Daisai, quickly find a bag to put the money in." Wasn't this making things difficult for Ao Daisai? He looked around. There was no sign of people here. How could there be a bag? Oh, wait for me. But he still decided to look around. What if there were some fish that had been blown by the wind? Okay, then I'll pile up first. Yolashanda answered loudly. He had completely forgotten about the beautiful scenery. Now he was only thinking about digging caterpillar fungus. Ah, no, digging for money. Ao Daisai trotted to look for the fish that had escaped. He was very smart. He knew that the closer to the road, the more likely they would find what they were looking for. Sure enough, there was a yellow plastic bag hanging on a tree near the road. The tree was neither tall nor short. When Ao Daisai stood upright, he could reach it with his mouth. He carefully untied the plastic bag and went back to look for Yolashanda. When the plastic bag came, Yolashanda was very happy. But he did not forget to tease Ao Daisai. "Why do you always like to pick up yellow things?" Ao Daisai felt wronged. After all, there was only one bag in a radius of 10 miles. The color was completely random. "You've been running for so long. Are you tired? Go drink some water and rest," Yolashanda said sadly. He did not ask Ao Daisai to dig for money with him. This was his fun, but Ao Daisai might not like it. Ao Daisai was not interested in this kind of treasure hunting game. After eating and drinking, he lay down beside Yolashanda and slept. Yolashanda realized that no matter how far he walked, he would always see Ao Daisai lying nearby. Occasionally, he would come over to see how much money he had dug. Yolashanda would proudly say to him, "We didn't expect this, right? This little bit can buy a lot of delicious food." Listening to Yolashanda's conversion, Ao Daisai roughly understood. No wonder money was so important to Yolashanda. It was because money equaled delicious food. You can also exchange it for honey. Yolashanda licked his lips and said. Ao Daisai also licked his lips. He thought that he should find a beehive and poke it for the next few days. There were wolves on the grassland without trees. In the forest with shrubs, there was another kind of danger hidden, the black bear. In order to eat the honey, Ao Daisai was not afraid of the black bear at all, but he needed Yolashanda to go with him. Yolashanda, who was traumatized by the bee's stings, was a little scared. Why must I go? Couldn't Ao Daisai go by himself and bring some back for him to eat? Tell me, are you trying to harm me? The white horse's eyes suddenly widened like copper bells. Ao Daisai, he looked puzzled. He doted on Little Bear too much. He wanted to bring the little bear to share the honey with him. How could he be harming the little bear? Yolashanda, who wanted to eat but did not dare to go, pouted his lips and said, "I'm afraid that the bee will sting me." If the bear's face was swollen, he could still say that it was cute. If the horse's face was swollen, he did not want to live anymore. I see. Ao Daisai got it. All right then, I'll go by myself. Wait for me here. I'll bring it back for you. Yolashanda thought in his heart. Okay, on the surface, really? There are black bears in the forest. You really don't need my help? Ao Daisai looked like he wanted to say something, but in the end, he did not say it. He was not the kind of person who liked to say that he was awesome. No need. The black horse's figure quickly disappeared at the bottom of the mountain. Yolashanda, who stayed at the same spot, thought for a while. She still felt uneasy. What if Ao Daisai really met a black bear? Although her face was swollen, she would be a widow if her boyfriend was gone. She hid her money bag well, and the white horse also trotted after her. Ao Daisai, wait for me. Facing Yolashanda, who did not mean what she said, Ao Daisai was not angry. Instead, he was a little happy. The author has something to say. Who doesn't say that she is good at managing her household? She can earn money while traveling. Chapter 264. On the other side, Yolashanda and Ao Daisai quietly went to the woods to look for beehives. They did not tell their friend Xiayin. There was no other reason. The main reason was that Xia was nowhere to be found. It seemed that she had her own social circle. Obviously, it was the Red Day horse. Now, they were very close and were almost inseparable. Yolashanda was a little suspicious that they were in a relationship. The relationship between a professional horse racer and a wild horse girl sounded a little sadistic. To be honest, Yolashanda did not support it. Whether Xia stayed or the wild horse followed, one of the horses would sacrifice a lot for the other in this relationship. It was impossible for Xia to stay. Using the method of elimination, Yolashanda guessed that her friend had a tracking device on him. Sooner or later, Daiwei would find a way to get him back. Then, Red Day could only go back with him. Then, Ao Daisai could protect her lazy partner who was full of bad habits. Could Xia give Red Day a future? It seemed that it was impossible even if one thought with their toes. Only by holding their own fate firmly in their hands could they give their other half happiness. There was no shortage of beehives in the deserted woods. Some of them had already grown very big. They were just within reach of the branches of the trees. The honey pieces almost covered the entire tree trunk, making people drool. The two horses ate to their heart's content. They had originally planned to leave in a few days, but now they decided to stay here for a while. The honey and the caterpillar fungus, which could be exchanged for money, made Yolashanda stay in the grassland for 3 months. In these 3 months, the outside world had long been turned upside down. Everyone was guessing whether something had happened to them when they had disappeared without a trace. If Daiwei had not kept track of Xia whereabouts, the 3 horsemen, who had been waiting in despair, would have almost forgotten that they had horses. In September, the temperature in the grassland suddenly dropped. It finally reminded the 3 horses that they should go home. Before returning home, Ao Daisai and the others brought the wild horses to an area suitable for winter activities. Only then did they feel relieved. They chose to leave at night. That night, the atmosphere of parting was very strong. The horses kept looking back. One reason was that they were worried that wild horses would habitually follow them. These days, the wild horses had already treated them as companions. After all, it was different from the world they lived in. After a short meeting, they still had to return to their own lives. One was that he was looking forward to a horse following him. It was obvious that Xia was very reluctant to part with his new friend, but he was also reluctant to let him leave his familiar tribe. A horse had followed him for thousands of miles. Yolashanda did not know how to comfort him. Sigh. Everyone had their own destiny. Taking a step back was freedom, but taking a step forward was an unknown world. If he was the Red Date, he would not know what to choose. Together with Xia, they kept looking back for a long time. In the end, they still turned around and ran away. After they left, a red horse slowly came up. It blinked its gentle eyes and stood on the hillside, looking at the 3 strong figures leaving. Intelligent horses cherish their friends, but at the same time, they also cherish the tribe that they depended on. Wild horses and racehorses were originally 2 different worlds. They were lucky enough to meet each other and spend a very good time together. At this time, whether it was the 3 racehorses or the wild horse that sent them off, their hearts should be very full. On the way back, the 3 horses ran until the golden light appeared in the sky. After a short rest by the water, they continued to run wildly. Daiwei woke up in the morning and habitually took out his mobile phone to see where his dear Xia was today. Then he was stunned. The little blue dot representing Xia was moving back. His Xia was back. Daiwei was so happy that he danced and immediately informed his 2 friends that their horses would be back soon. In this way, the 3 horses galloped continuously on the grassland for several days and finally returned to the familiar road at the entrance of the village. The people who had been waiting here for a long time were wild with joy when they saw the horses. They were not willing to scold them. They only looked to see if they were injured and if they had lost weight. "You little bastard, you made me worry for a long time." Jia Sang hugged his horse and scolded it fiercely, but his face was full of smiles. The scumbag Yolashanda thought, Okay, it's just a retirement trip. Don't make a fuss about nothing. Oh, right, there's also the letter. The white horse held a yellow plastic bag in its mouth, and handed it to Jia Sang. "What is this?" Jia Sang touched it and was surprised. It was actually a bag of caterpillar fungus. Yolashanda was so smart. Jia Sang had taken a horse to dig it before. He did not expect the other party to remember. He laughed heartily. Mom must be very happy." Yes, Jia Sang's mother was very happy. She began to think that the little white horse at home was not playing around, but doing something serious. The arrogant Shuai did not hug Ao Daisai. He just crossed his arms and looked at the other party indifferently. After making sure that he was not injured and did not lose weight, he said lightly, "I know you are an accomplice. That's why I'm even angrier." It meant that this horse was willing to do anything for its partner. Ao Daisai, little yellow feather, seems to be talking to me. The second accomplice, Xia Yin, was treated warmly. Dai Wei could not bear to scold him. When he saw Dai Wei, who he had not seen for 3 months, he was also very happy. But after the happiness, he returned to his melancholy state. It was as if he had thought of his new friend. He turned his head and looked into the distance. It felt like a beautiful dream. Humans could not know about the situation of the horses in the grassland. They had their own romantic and emotional world. No one could pry into it. After returning home, it was as if everything had returned to normal. Shuai and Jia Sang brought the 2 horses back to the city to study. Dai Wei and Xia Yin returned to the country for training. They were preparing to compete in the next season. As time passed, everything in the grassland was like a dream. Occasionally, they would think about it with some regret. Yolashanda lay in the luxurious and warm stable. He ate the delicious food prepared by hand and sighed about the benefits of being raised in captivity. After not seeing them compete for more than half a year, the news of the world champion's retirement spread like wildfire. This caused a huge commotion. Yolashanda was not even 5 years old. Why did he retire so early? Later, he heard that Jia Sang wanted to continue his studies. It was understandable, but it was a pity that such a good horse could only waste his days. Yolashanda, was it a pity to waste his days? Wasn't this the ultimate goal of many young people nowadays? When he first joined the Olympics, he wanted to fulfill his dream. Secondly, he wanted to find Ao Daisai. Now that he had achieved both of his goals, he no longer had the motivation to compete. Ao Daisai was more than enough for him to retire with a bonus. Shuai would still bring Ao Daisai to various competitions during the winter and summer holidays. Jia Sang and Yolashanda became professional cheerleaders. Ao Daisai used to be jealous because Little Bear did not become his cheerleader. Now, Little Bear had become his personal cheerleader. He only cheered for him and danced for him. Cold knowledge of the day, Yolashanda not only danced when he won a competition, but he would also dance when his friends won. What a cute little white horse. As he was not competing, Yolashanda was even more unrestrained with his hairstyle. He would beg Jia Sang to put anything that looked good on his head. He wanted Ao Daisai to be able to spot him in the crowd. Ao Daisai wanted to say, "Actually, I don't need these fancy hairstyles. I can also spot you in the crowd." Their friend, Xia Yin, returned to the arena when the next season arrived. He was in good condition. As he grew older and experienced more, he became stronger and stronger. However, every time he encountered a group of horses, he would stop to take a look. Dai Wei could not understand the melancholy in Xia Yin's eyes. He only knew that he seemed to be looking for something. Did he miss his friend? During the free time, when he was not competing, Dai Wei arranged for Xia Yin and Yolashanda to meet. Although Xia Yin was happy, he was not completely happy. It seemed that ever since he came back from the grasslands, Xia Yin had a melancholy aura. His eyes always made people feel that he had a story in his heart. Xia Yin was lucky. He had a rider who truly cared about him and did not just treat him as a partner to win. In order to find out the story in Xia Yin's heart, Dai Wei told his friends that he had decided to go to the grasslands with Xia Yin again. When Yolashanda and Ao Daisai heard the news, they were happy for Xia Yin. Since Dai Wei had agreed to Xia Yin's persistence, the future would be good. As friends, of course, they were duty-bound to lead the way. They just prayed that in the past year, Red Date did not accept the courtship of other horses. They prayed that she would not forget Xia Yin, who was always on her mind. In June, Shuai was not on holiday, so he could not follow the group to the grasslands to propose marriage. Therefore, Jiaseng led the group, and the two of them set off to the grasslands together. Because the wild horses were constantly migrating on the grasslands, it was very difficult for ordinary people to find them. However, this was not a problem for the horses. They could follow the scent and find them. It was only a matter of time before the two sides met. When they found a fresh trail, they knew that they were not far from the herd of wild horses. Xiaoyin, who had always been quiet, let out a loud cry. The people on the horses were excited because even they could feel the excitement of the horses. This seemed to mean that they would find the answer soon. It should be a herd of wild horses. Dai Wei was very nervous. He did not know what would be waiting for him. Could it be that Xiaoyin had already left a child here? He could only say that he was thinking too much. Xiaoyin and Red Date were still pure friends. Not long after, a miracle happened. A Red Date horse rushed over from the hillside and appeared in front of the group of people. Sure enough, Xiaoyin had left a romantic debt on the grasslands. However, this idea was quickly overturned because behind this Red Date horse, other horses quickly appeared. There were many of them, and they galloped over. This was not as simple as a romantic debt. The three racehorses were revisiting their old haunts. Regardless of what the people on the horses were thinking, they suddenly sped up and met up with their wild horse friends who had not seen them for a year. Jiaseng laughed loudly. "Those are wild horses. We have not seen wild horses for a long time." When he sent the picture of himself and the wild horses to his senior brother, he sent an angry emoji and said, "If I had known it would be so fun, I would have skipped the exam and gone with you." The author has something to say, returning to the grasslands to propose marriage. Chapter 265. In this scene of reunion after a long separation, the horses were the protagonists. The human very sensibly got off the horse and only acted as a recorder. Xiaoyin, who had left the grassland for almost a year, missed the wild horse girl who was gentle and adoring to him so much. When they walked together, their noses touched, and then even their foreheads were pressed together. They were reluctant to leave each other. After parting, the longing fermented into a stronger love. The romantic and beautiful scene made the human involuntarily press his chest, feeling a little touched. Dai Wei finally understood why his horse would occasionally be absent-minded on the field. It was because the other party might have seen countless date red horses, but none of them were her. They're together again. How nice, Dai Wei murmured. He felt that he had done a sacred thing. He was very glad that he had decided to go deep into the grassland again. The only regret was that this wild horse girl was very slim. At first glance, he could tell that she did not have a baby. Xiaoyin, do your best. On Xiao Qishi's side, he and Ao Daisai were surrounded by the wild horses, being sniffed and inspected by everyone. This was a sign of concern. It was very likely that the wild horses thought that they had been separated until today, when he finally found the main group, so they took turns to care for them. Xiao Qishi's heart softened. He gently touched the heads of these nostalgic wild horses one by one to show that he was fine and that he had not been hungry during the lost days. A grown flower horse walked out of the wild horses. His eyes were full of the white horse that he had not seen in a long time. Xiao Qishi recognized the spots on his forehead at a glance, but he really did not dare to recognize it. Was it a little flower horse? It had only been a year, and he had grown so tall and strong. It seemed that he was living a good life. This handsome flower horse seemed to want to get close to the white horse, but before he could stretch out his neck to touch the white horse's mouth, a black figure stopped him. Ao Daisai had been the temporary leader of this herd of wild horses. His presence was a deterrent to the wild horses. This time, it was just a slight glance, and the flower horse instinctively retreated, no longer trying to cross the line. In fact, Xiao Qishi didn't think it was a big deal. In his eyes, Huama was just a child. However, he wouldn't object to Ao Daisai. If Ao Daisai felt uncomfortable, he would definitely prioritize Ao Daisai's feelings. So he could only nod and show his friendliness to the flower horse. It was okay for Wild Horse to come over and touch Ilishanda's head, but Ao Daisai obviously wouldn't allow them to touch Ilishanda's mouth. That was the bottom line. As for himself, although he was very happy to be reunited with the wild horses, he did not express much. Perhaps allowing the wild horses to meet Yulishanda would be the best way to express his feelings. Noticing that Ao Daisai was busy carrying out strict checks, Jia Sang was convulsing with laughter. No wonder Senior Brother said that Ao Daisai was the king of jealousy. It turned out to be true, but it was no wonder because Yulishanda was too cute and too popular. Whether it was horses or humans, they all liked him. He couldn't help but want to take a picture to show Senior Brother, but after thinking about it, he felt that it would be too unfriendly to Senior Brother during exam week. So Jia Sang sent the video to Coach Lee. Anyway, Coach Lee already knew about Yulishanda and Ao Daisai. Being open-minded, he didn't object to it. Instead, he felt that Yulishanda and Ao Daisai were a good match. In this world, there was probably no one who was more handsome, more powerful, and more compatible with Yulishanda than Ao Daisai. And in this world, only Yulishanda, who was so cute, so smart, and so full of ideas, could subdue Ao Daisai. Coach Lee, who loved horses, was very happy to receive this video. He and Shuai Lai both yearned for the grassland, not to mention the grassland where wild horses roamed. This was heaven in his mind. Unfortunately, the children didn't like to play with him, and he cried until he fainted in the toilet. When he heard that Xiaoyin fell in love with a wild horse girl in the grassland, Coach Lee immediately said that he must tell Dai Wei to leave the child's coaching seat to Poor Lee. Poor Lee couldn't be there to enjoy the fairy tale scene in person, but he was very lucky. Soon, he would get the chance to coach a little horse. Indeed, Ao Daisai was still young and could be active in the competition for a few more years. But don't forget that professional injuries could easily occur in horse racing, so they didn't want to enslave Ao Daisai too much. After reuniting, Yulishanda stayed with them on the grassland for a few days. At the same time, he understood Dai Wei's decision. First of all, he didn't oppose Xia Yin's pursuit of love. If Red Date was willing, he was very willing to create opportunities for them to get along. For example, if he invited Red Date to watch Xia Yin's competition, then Xia Yin would definitely be the brightest star in the competition. For example, during off-season and special holidays, they could bring their families to the grassland for a vacation. Dai Wei felt that this was a very meaningful thing. It was like the love story of two white storks that had once caused a sensation on the internet. As a human, why couldn't he protect such a sincere relationship? In a few days that they were reunited, Xia Yin and his first love made rapid progress. They were already a pair of inseparable lovers. The horses went to play by themselves. Jia Sang took Dai Wei to dig for worm stalks. When he entered the grassland, his mother said that he should dig up some worm stalks. If the little white horse could dig up so much, Jia Sang couldn't be worse than the little white horse. Jia Sang frowned and scratched his head. He felt that it was easy for his mother to say that. In the evening, Jia Sang cooked potato and meat stew. The aroma attracted a group of wild horses. One pot wasn't enough to share, so Jia Sang and Dai Wei quickly finished their meal. However, he could play the harmonica for the horses. Smoke rose from the bonfire burning in the mud. A black-haired young man sat cross-legged next to it, playing his harmonica. His friend couldn't help but sway his body next to him. The horses were scattered all over the grassland, leisurely grazing. Yulishanda heard a familiar melody and gently hummed along. Then he told Ao Daisai that this was a song he often heard when he was in school. It was a memory of his youth. What is youth? It was the period of time before we matured, when we were ignorant and pure. Ao Daisai thought about his youth and realized that all his memories were of a cute and white little bear. When they were about to leave, Red Date seemed to understand that they would eventually return to the grassland. This time, she chose the sincere Xiaoyin. The other party must have liked her very much, so he didn't force her to leave with him the first time. The second time, he brought his family and friends to solemnly propose to her. The ending was so perfect that Yulishanda's heart melted. He and Ao Daisai sighed. Doesn't Xiaoyin look like a groom who came to fetch his bride? He brought his family and friends to marry his wife in a dignified manner. That's great. He also promised his wife's family that he would visit the grassland often in the future. This was a perfect ending, wasn't it? Ao Daisai kissed the little bear who had been following him since he was a year old. He wondered if the little cutie was regretting that he didn't marry her in a dignified manner. Or maybe he missed his family. Red Date followed Xia-in all the way to an unfamiliar world. Xia-in was very gentle to her and was always afraid that she would fall behind, so he cleverly ran behind his wife. If a horse wanted to travel internationally, it had to go through a lot of relevant procedures and documents. When it came to Red Date's passport, after careful discussion, they felt that although Red Date was married to Xia-in, a China passport was better. She couldn't apply for the same passport as Xia-in. Dai Wei wanted to help his partner, but he had no choice. He had to admit that a China passport was better. After finishing all the procedures, some time had passed. Shuelai was also on summer vacation. He was about to bring Ao Daisai and Ao Daisai's little white horse to earn some money. Of course, there was also Jia Sang. In the last year, Jia Sang will be taking the college entrance exam. If he didn't keep an eye on him, the boastful Jia Sang would probably rather dig for caterpillars than pick up a book to study. Shuelai was very familiar with this kind of life. What made him happy was that Dai Wei was also living a life of taking care of his family. Red Date wasn't a professional horse racer, so Dai Wei had to hire a professional breeder to take care of her. Usually, wherever Xia-in went to race, he would bring his family along. Yolashanda, she's a professional cheerleader like me. Other than cheering, she's just doing nothing. Not long after, there was good news. Red Date, who was with Xia-in at various races, had a baby. Xia-in, who was about to become a father, performed very well in the following season. Perhaps he already knew that a child was a money grubber and would cost a lot of money in the future. After the season ended, Xia-in and Red Date returned to their hometown to wait for birth. He was too sneaky. He thought that he could get the foal's nationality by doing this. However, her family was too strong. They said that no matter where the foal was born, its passport would definitely be from China. Dai Wei cried until he fainted in the toilet. Like Xia-in, he worked hard for a whole year for nothing. Other than taking care of Red Date and her daughter, he didn't get anything in the end. His friend's wife was about to give birth to a foal. Yolashanda couldn't help but be jealous. Recently, she had been a little moody. It wasn't that she was sad. She was just a little upset. After retiring, she didn't do anything. Gradually, she felt that her life was a little empty. It wasn't as fulfilling as when she was on active duty. Yolashanda decided to find something for herself to do. For example, she would organize her old toys. She would sell those that were missing an arm or a leg. What? You're saying that it's hard to sell those that are missing an arm or a leg. These are the toys that the world champion played with. After understanding Little Bear's intentions, Ao Daisai quietly helped her. His memory was very good. He found a lot of forgotten toys in every corner of the house. Shuelai was speechless. She was confused as she watched the two of them do things. Until Ao Daisai put the box of toys in her car. Shuelai got it. Donate broken toys? That was a good idea. However, Yolashanda was really something. She didn't want to donate the ones that were in good condition. She only donated the ones that were missing an arm or a leg. After checking them one by one, they weren't very damaged. The arrogant Shuelai couldn't bear to ignore Yolashanda's request, so he bought some new ones. Then, he brought them to the orphanage and told the children that these were toys given to them by the world champion horse. He hoped that they would be happy every day. Yolashanda cried until he fainted in the toilet. Although it was good to donate toys, his original intention was to give them away. Boo-hoo. Thinking about it from another perspective, he was actually such a kind horse in little Yellow Hair's heart. Yolashanda, who was acknowledged by others, was elated. He decided to donate toys to the orphanage regularly in the future. This was indeed a very meaningful thing to do. He immediately started to pack up the toys that he was going to donate next time. The toys that were in good condition were donated. Moreover, they were all Yolashanda's favorite toys. This time, it was Ao Daisai's turn to be reluctant. He picked up one that Yolashanda threw into the box. Yolashanda was stunned. He really should let A.O. Daisai's fans see how stingy this stingy person was. The author has something to say. One who stays with ink is stained black. Chapter 266. When a month came, Red Date gave birth to a colt whose color was between hers and Xia Yin's. It wasn't as red as Red Date's, nor was it as light brown. In short, it was a beautiful colt. Dai Wei sent a video message to everyone early in the morning. In the spacious and airy stable, Xia Yin and Red Date lowered their heads to lick the newborn colt. The colt's body was still wet. After standing for a while, it was probably too tired, so it simply lay down and accepted the care of its parents. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but there was also a small whirlpool on the colt's forehead. It looked very cute. Jia Sang was the first to notice this feature. He exclaimed, "Yolashanda has one too." When everyone saw that it was true, they happily joked that it would be great if the colt could be as good as Yolashanda, or as cute as Yolashanda. Not every colt could successfully become a professional racehorse, but people didn't force it. Even if it was just an ordinary horse, it didn't matter as long as it lived a happy life. Qiao Qishi and A.O. Daisai also came over to look at Jia Sang's phone. Jia Sang simply projected it on the wall for them to see. Qiao Qishi looked at the colt that was doted on and said with emotion, "This child is really lucky. He was born in the best era. His mother was a wild horse, and his father was a racehorse. If he took a step back, he could go to the grasslands and live in seclusion. If he took a step forward, he could walk on the world stage and shine." Horses grew very quickly. They could run and jump at 3 months and were very strong. At that time, it was the off-season for racing. Dai Wei kept his promise and sent 3 horses to China with his family to visit relatives. Jia Sang didn't go the next time. He was about to take an exam and was very nervous. Shuelai was a strict senior. Jia Sang received systematic learning from the teacher during the day and was tutored by his senior at night. There was a small exam every 2 days and a big exam every 3 days. All kinds of papers and tests gave him a headache. If he was brave enough, sooner or later he would say, "I give up on my dream." However, his senior would be furious. If his junior didn't get into his school, it would be the only stain on his genius senior's life. In order not to be a stain on his senior's life, Jia Sang could only work hard. After dinner, there was another exam. Jia Shuelai, too. Alisanda glanced at the question and was extremely anxious. He felt that it was quite simple. To solve it like this, then solve it like that. Anyone with hands would be able to do it. I remember you talking about this question before. Shuelai was flipping through a magazine. He saw Jia Sang scratching his face and frowned. What did he learn in the past year? Jia Sang groaned in his heart. "I think so. Let me think." Suddenly, a call came in and interrupted Shuelai's lecture. He picked up his phone and looked at the caller ID. It was a call that he had to answer. "You do it first. I'm going out to take a call." In order not to disturb Jia Sang, Shuelai stood up and went out. As soon as he left, Alisanda hurriedly brought over the papers that Jia Sang usually did. He asked Jia Sang to quickly find a similar type of question and look at the steps quickly. Jia Sang didn't even think of cheating, but the opportunity was right in front of him. It would be a waste if he didn't look at it. He quickly flipped through the papers and threw them aside. He asked Yolashanda to destroy the evidence. Small problem. Yolashanda picked up the cheating tool and hit it well. A.O. Daisai followed him out and stood beside Shuelai to keep watch. When he saw that the blonde had finished his call, he informed the other party. "The blonde is coming back." Yolashanda, "No, I haven't finished. Can you delay it?" "Okay." A.O. Daisai had no choice but to snatch the phone from the blonde's hand and put it far away. Shuelai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He chased after the blonde and snatched his phone back. "What's wrong with A.O. Daisai? Is he bored and wants me to play with him?" Shuelai thought too highly of himself. When Jia Sang finished his test paper, he went to the stable to play with A.O. Daisai. But A.O. Daisai ignored him. But this is a story for later. When he walked into the study, Jia Sang was obediently writing his test paper. Shuelai walked over to take a look. He finally solved it. Not bad, not too stupid. Jia Sang smiled shyly and winked at Yilashanda when his senior couldn't see him. Yilashanda also winked at him. It's no big deal. In the end, Jia Sang, who was originally only able to solve 1/3 of the test paper, managed to solve 2/3 of it with the help of the 2 horses. Shuelai looked satisfied. After receiving his senior's reward, Jia Sang thought sadly, "Can I bring 2 horses with me for the exam?" He was a specially recruited student and didn't have high cultural requirements, but he had to at least be passable. Shuelai wouldn't allow him to embarrass himself. Pony Xia, who was Xia Yin's pony, started to receive initial training after returning from the grassland. Yilashanda and Ao Daisai went to see how the coach trained a naughty pony. Pony Xia was very naughty. In the past few months, they had heard Dai Wei complain more than once. They felt that Pony Xia's career was bleak. Reality proved that the second generation was often spoiled. The father was talented, but the son wasn't necessarily talented. Coach Lee didn't believe it. He had to try. Then he opened his eyes. This was the first time he saw such an annoying pony. The main thing was that it didn't listen. When he was told to calm down, it would run like crazy. When he was told to move forward, it would stubbornly stand there like a statue. When Coach Lee was knocked to the ground for the nth time, he finally got up and patted his butt. This pony didn't listen to him. Moreover, it was protected by a group of elders. When he raised his hand, Yilashanda came over and stopped him. Children were naughty by nature. Calm down, calm down. Xiayin won a race. As his uncle, Yilashanda had to watch over him. He only had one nephew. He didn't have any children, so he threw all his love to Pony Xia. If he wasn't talented, then so be it. What was so good about professional horse racing? Coach Lee had no choice but to go back and calm down. He would teach him another day. Fortunately, Pony Xia's aptitude was fine. With Yilashanda and Ao Daisai's guidance, he showed great talent at a young age. When his personality stabilized, he would also be a good racehorse. That should be 2 or 3 years later. Yilashanda and Ao Daisai could still see it. Days passed. Jia Sang's revision was not bad, but his composition was very bad. Other than the simplest topic like my father/friend/horse, he couldn't write anything else. Even if he wanted to write about the grassland scenery, he didn't have that many words. It was very difficult for him to write 800 words. This kind of composition was okay in elementary school. However, Jia Sang was almost 20 years old. It was not very suitable for him to write such ordinary content. In the end, Jia Sang was too naive and had little experience. The things he wanted to express were also very straightforward and simple. He didn't have much thinking and skill. Based on various considerations, Shuelai brought them to a sanatorium that specialized in taking care of injured horses during the holidays. It was run by the people and was semi-public. Other than the few permanent staff, there were also many volunteers who came to help. When Shuelai asked Jia Sang if he wanted to try being a volunteer, Jia Sang nodded without hesitation. A week later, Jia Sang wrote an emotional and profound essay. However, the aftereffects were too great. Jia Sang decided to donate some of his prize money to support the sanatorium's operation. He suddenly worked hard to learn and improve himself. He wanted to become a stronger person so that he could do more things. The people around Jia Sang sighed. This young man had grown up a little. Yilashanda had seen all kinds of things in this world. He had walked the path of life and death countless times. Although at certain times, he wouldn't be like Jia Sang when things suddenly hit his soul, he still didn't change. He was still as kind and soft-hearted as before. Even if Jia Sang decided to donate all of his prize money, Yilashanda didn't feel bad because Ao Daisai still had some. Ao Daisai's prize money had been spent, but Blondie still had some. In June of the next year, Jia Sang successfully completed the college entrance exam. Through the strict evaluation of his senior, he got a good result. Jia Sang, who had already returned to his hometown, brought joy to his family and fellow villagers. Jia Sang's father was very happy. While he was drunk, he told his wife and children that after selling this batch of yaks, they would no longer rear yaks. They would go to the city to accompany Jia Sang in his studies. When Jia Sang dropped out of school and returned home to work as a farmer, they felt that they owed Jia Sang. As for the few remaining horses at home, they entrusted them to the villagers. No matter how the people around them arranged their lives, Yilashanda and Ao Daisai were always together. When Jia Sang entered school, Shuelai was already in his 3rd year. He could leave school in another year. Shuelai, who owned a mine, didn't want to do research, so there was no need for him to study. In this way, he only had 2 years left. In these 2 years, Ao Daisai competed in the winter and summer holidays. The rest of the time, he stayed at home and wasted time with Yilashanda. As Little Yellow Hair's graduation season approached, they were a little worried. Would their lives change? For example, would Little Yellow Hair get married? What if his future wife didn't like horses? Luckily, Little Yellow Hair didn't seem to be enlightened. After knowing him for so long, Yilashanda had never seen him go out to meet friends. Other than studying, he was either immersed in his hobbies or taking his horse out to compete. He also had to take care of his junior, Jia Sang. Life was very busy. Thinking about it, with Little Yellow Hair's arrogant personality, it would be difficult for him to start a relationship. For example, when it was rare for him to have a holiday, other youngsters would be cool and handsome. Little Yellow Hair, on the other hand, would dress up his horse to be cool and handsome and take it out to have fun. Large dogs were banned in the city, but horses were not banned. Moreover, Yilashanda was not an ordinary horse. Every time he entered a place with guards, when they heard his identity, they would be respectful and salute him. Yilashanda's D*MN vanity was greatly satisfied, so he liked to go out even more. However, there were also people who didn't like them. They stood at the side and whispered, questioning whether they would destroy public property, urinate, and defecate everywhere. Yilashanda was so angry. In the future, when he went out, he would hang a gold medal around his neck. Let's see who would dare to talk about him. Little Yellow Hair. The poor play with cars, and the rich play with watches. Raising horses means you are destined to die alone. Chapter 267. Barbecue stalls, Odin, fried chicken, all kinds of fragrances lingered on the food street, attracting the greedy Yilashanda. Since Blondie trusted their self-management skills, he did not always hold their hands when they went shopping. Most of the time, he was in charge of them and supervised them. Relying on this trust, Yilashanda boldly stopped in front of the fried chicken steak stall. Looking at the oily chicken steak, he even drooled. Shuelai was sending a message to his junior brother. As he walked, he realized that one of the horses was not following them. He turned around and saw that the horse was squeezing in front of the fried chicken steak stall. He was so hungry that he could not move. Ao Daisai was in between the two of them. He looked like he wanted to intervene, but at the same time, he did not want to. Perhaps he was worried that Yilashanda would be angry if he intervened too much. Forgive him for being blunt, but Ao Daisai did not have the dignity of a family head at all. Shuelai immediately walked over and said to Ao Daisai, "Go and bring him back." Ao Daisai, who had been standing there, was indeed hesitating whether to bring Yilashanda over. However, he did not like Blondie's commanding tone. This way, he would pretend not to hear. However, Shuelai had served him for so long. Of course, he knew that he actually understood such a simple request. As for whether he would do it or not, it would depend on his mood. For example, right now, he clearly heard it, but still did not do it. This meant that he did not want to do it. You have to know, inhaling too much oil is not good for your body. Shuelai suppressed his anger at being disrespected. He could only soften his tone and use objective facts to move the other party. Sure enough, once he heard that something bad was going to happen to Yilashanda, Ao Daisai immediately stopped pretending to be deaf. He quickly went over to negotiate. As expected, Yilashanda acted shamelessly. He stomped his hooves and refused to leave. Shuelai guessed that Ao Daisai might not be able to stand the other party's coquettish behavior and change sides. Then he would come over with Yilashanda and ask him to buy fried chicken steak. It wasn't like this had never happened before. Inhaling too much oil and fumes was not good for the body. Moreover, fried chicken cutlets were junk food. Ao Daisai knew this, so he was very determined this time and would not easily change sides. Faced with Yulashanda's unwillingness to cooperate, he looked left and right and then tried to think of a solution. There's a ring over there. Do you want to go over and take a look? Compared to buying junk food from the streets, Ao Daisai was more willing to buy Yulashanda toys. Although it was not delicious, it was fun. Yulashanda weighed the pros and cons. He felt that even if he were to lie on the ground and roll around, he would not be able to get a fried chicken steak. Hence, he did not want to waste his time and energy. Oh, I can only choose one out of the two. Excellent hunters knew that it was impossible, but they still wanted to give it a try. The oil pots on the streets are not healthy. You'll get sick if you eat them. Ao Daisai gave a reason to refuse. Then, she held Yulashanda's hand and went to the ring throwing stall. The oil pots on the streets are unhealthy? It must be a concept taught by the blonde. The ring throwing stall owner had just set up his stall, and there were no customers yet. Suddenly, he saw two horses coming over. He looked at them a few times with interest. He thought that these horses were so beautiful. They must have cost a lot to keep them, right? Oh, look at their shiny fur. The black horse was mysterious and handsome, and the white horse was handsome and elegant. They were too eye-catching when they walked together. Shualai thought that Ao Daisai was very clever. He even knew how to use other things to divert Yulashanda's attention. This was a good tactic. As a tactful breeder, Shualai hurriedly came over to pay the bill. He bought 5 rings for Alessandra to play with, even though he knew that he was wasting his money. Yulashanda was very interested, but he did not have much confidence. He picked up a ring and threw it forward. As expected, it missed. When they realized that he really knew how to play, the breeder and the stall owner stared at him. This horse really knew how to play with rings. Oh, I didn't get it. Alessandra had a look of pity on his face. The price of the hoop had increased. In the past, 1 hoop cost 2 yuan, and 5 hoops cost 10 yuan. Now, 1 hoop cost 10 yuan, and 5 hoops cost 50 yuan. Throw another one. Ao Daisai encouraged. No way. The next ring did not hit, and he wasted another 10 renminbi. No matter how good his family was, he could not afford to waste so much money. Yulashanda did not have confidence in himself, but he had confidence in Ao Daisai. He smiled and passed the ring to Ao Daisai. Why don't you do it? Seeing the rings in front of him, Ao Daisai felt that he was trusted. He nodded. The horse did not say much and directly asked, "Which one do you want?" Yulashanda jumped for joy. He looked at the lion plushie without hesitation. "I want the lion." Ao Daisai picked up the ring and threw it forward. The ring landed on the lion plushie. The stall owner and the breeder's mouth formed an O shape. This works. The happiest person was Yulashanda. He eagerly waited for the stall owner to give him the lion plushie. After being silently urged by the handsome white horse with its big eyes, the stall owner seemed to wake up from a dream. He immediately went in and took out the lion plushie. "Thank you." Yulashanda immediately stretched his neck and took the plushie that his boyfriend had helped him win. The horses could play with rings. This scene attracted the attention of many passers-by. They felt that it was magical, and at the same time, they felt that these 2 horses were really cute. Would they continue to play? Of course, Yulashanda still had 3 more rings, which meant that he still had 3 plushies to take. "I want a puppy," Yulashanda suddenly said when he saw a puppy. Ao Daisai agreed silently. He simply threw another ring and caught the puppy that Yulashanda wanted. "Ao Daisai, you're really good." Yulashanda's eyes were full of admiration. He knew how difficult it was after playing, but Ao Daisai never missed. There were still 2 more rings, but there was nothing on the field that Yulashanda wanted. He was obviously hesitating. Ao Daisai looked up. "Do you want that pot of flowers?" It was a pot of yellow Chinese rose called balcony juice. It had already bloomed 3 flowers and was very beautiful. Yulashanda nodded. Not long after, a pot of flowers appeared in the hands of the blonde. As a breeder who had worked hard, even if he did not have any merits, he casually suggested, "That ship model is very nice. Maybe you can take it. Give it to the poor breeder." Ao Daisai was temporarily deaf again. He He did not even look at the ship model. Although the blonde bought the rings, he did not deserve it. In the last ring, Ao Daisai caught a tank of small goldfish. The tank was as big as a football, and there were 2 beautiful goldfish in it. The stall owner lost a lot of money, but the 2 horses attracted a lot of customers. He received a lot of money. Shuelai did not get the ship model, but he was very happy to get a tank of small goldfish. He remembered that some time ago, he seemed to have mentioned that he wanted to raise 2 goldfish at home. He did not expect Ao Daisai to catch goldfish. If this was not telepathy, then what was? Little did he know that Ao Daisai casually caught the goldfish because Yulishanda likes small animals. Shuelai was so touched by his own imagination that he went home happily with the potted plant in his left hand and the fish tank in his right hand. He even posted these 2 items on the internet, insisting that they were gifts from Ao Daisai. The netizens' focus was unreasonably skewed. This week's flower/fish. It meant that the flower and fish could only be kept for a week. After a week, they would definitely die. This was not a curse, but an experience. The netizens had experienced it firsthand. Shuelai. Everyone was thinking too much. He lived in a luxurious house. The small balcony juice was planted in the garden by the gardener. The 2 goldfish were changed into a huge tank and professionally raised. Ever since Shuelai raised the flower and fish, he posted it on the internet once a week. In the end, the netizens admitted defeat. It's not that the business is evil, it's that I'm bad. The more he looked at the trophies, the more he liked them. Ao Daisai felt that the ring was quite fun. He asked Yulishanda if he still wanted to go. They went to find the blonde to take him out. Of course, Yulishanda wanted to go, but he felt that it was not a good idea. If Ao Daisai went every day, no one would dare to set up a ring-throwing stall on the pedestrian street in the future. This was easy to handle. Ao Daisai told Yulishanda not to worry and that they could go to another street. Yulishanda, could it be that after the seal killer, Ao Daisai would have a new title, the ring-throwing killer? Since Ao Daisai wanted to kill them all, let's go. On days when there were no competitions, it would be lonely not to go ring-throwing. Fortunately, Shuelai, who was about to graduate, was not busy with his studies. It was said that he had already written 2 editions of his graduation thesis. He was a god. Yulishanda knew that Shuelai had written 2 editions of his thesis because he heard it from Jia Sang. The naive Jia Sang actually thought that his seniors in Yu's thesis should not be wasted. It would be great if he could give it to him. As a flunky, Alisanda actually had some understanding of the situation. During the last winter break before Shuelai's graduation, he suddenly announced to everyone that this would be the last season of his horse racing career. He was also going to retire. Coach Lu was already aware of this and did not feel regretful. Moreover, he was now taking care of Xia Xiaoma and spent almost all his time and effort on her. Jia Sang and Shuelai were already in the past and were no longer valued. Dai Wei was the saddest. When he first became friends with Jia Sang, he thought that this young friend of his would be active in the field for a long time. He did not expect that Jia Sang would announce his retirement after participating in the Olympics. He was sad for a long time before he could accept this fact. Now that he heard the news of Shuelai's retirement, it meant that he would be the only one left in the field in the future. He felt a little sad. Along the way, each of their friends' lives had been progressing in an orderly manner. They were sad because they were afraid that time would pass too quickly and they would have to rush to the next stage of their lives before they could savor it. But sometimes, big changes were not always sad. In June of the same year that Shuelai announced his retirement, Dai Wei also ushered in a big event in his life. He became the first groom among his friends to get married. Yulishanda was surprised and happy. God, it was not easy. Dai Wei is heterosexual. Good. He finally had the chance to experience such a fun thing as attending a wedding. On the day of Dai Wei's wedding, the black horse and the white horse each wore a bow tie and dressed up handsomely. When Yulishanda heard that Xia Yin was responsible for delivering the ring on the day, he could not wait to add scenes for himself. For example, when Xia Yin went on stage with a basket in her mouth, he and Ao Daisai escorted Xia Yin to send her blessings to her partner. because no one knew about this scene beforehand. When the three horses walked on the red carpet together, the people attending the wedding were surprised that the groom had arranged such a surprise. The bride was so happy. Looking at the groom, who was also surprised and moved speechless, Yelishanda, who added scenes without permission, thought, "I like to see you guys who have not seen the world. Also, please be happy. Hoop killer. Let's be happy together with hearts. Also, I would like to ask for a special column collection. That is, click on the author's collection. I have never asked for it before. Look at how little I have. This damn vanity can't be satisfied. Please accept Hyde." Chapter 268. Human weddings were very lively, and the horses attracted a lot of attention from the moment they stepped onto the stage. After that, no one stared at them anymore. This made it convenient for Yelishanda to secretly drink the champagne at the wedding. It tasted sweet, and Ao Daisai had to try it. It tasted better than honey. Ao Daisai's eyes were full of disbelief. Perhaps in his mind, there was nothing sweeter than honey in this world. "If you don't believe me, why don't you try it?" Yelishanda took a sip of the champagne, then put his mouth next to Ao Daisai's and gave him a gentle champagne-flavored kiss. Ao Daisai opened his eyes slightly. Perhaps he should take back his arbitrary judgment just now. There were still tastes sweeter than bees in this world, such as Yelishanda's kiss. The two horses kissed at a human wedding as if no one was around, and they became the focus of attention once again. What was good was that no one thought that they should not. This was such pure love. Ao Daisai, who was dressed very handsomely today, kissed Yelishanda again and again. He was more excited than usual, as if the champagne at the other party's mouth made him drunk and broke his restraint. Yelishanda was also intoxicated by the intimate atmosphere. He felt that there was no better time than now. He cherished the time he had with Ao Daisai so much. Wait. After being intimate for a long time, Ao Daisai was finally willing to leave his cute partner. Then he walked to the flower column and secretly took a white rose when no one was looking. He gave the flower to Yelishanda. Yelishanda was surprised to receive the flower. He smiled and asked Ao Daisai, "Why are you suddenly giving me flowers?" He was stunned when he saw Ao Daisai. After thinking for a long time, he said, "You like flowers?" Little Bear would be happy to receive the flower, and then he would be happy too. "You don't like it?" Ao Daisai blinked and moved closer to his partner. "I will satisfy you no matter what today." How could Alexander not like being stared at by this pair of deep and affectionate eyes? He thought for a while. Did the atmosphere today affect you? He recalled that when the bride and groom were reading the vows, Ao Daisai seemed to be very focused and thoughtful. He was probably thinking of himself and his partner. Yelishanda more or less understood. It was also Ao Daisai's first time attending a wedding. It was the first time he knew that there was such a ceremony. So, Ao Daisai romantically gave him a rose. A rose. The more Alessandra thought about it, the sweeter it felt. She shyly kissed her boyfriend a few times to show that she liked the roses. The white horse with the rose in its mouth was too eye-catching. Many people approached to admire it. This made Ao Daisai jealous. He led Yelishanda to a corner to date. Behind the white gauze curtain in the background was a good place where no one would disturb them and whisper to each other. That night, Yelishanda stole wine and got drunk. He and Ao Daisai had a very good night. Then, half a year later, David became a father-to-be. This reliable man, who put his family first, finished his last season and happily embarked on the wonderful life of retirement with his friends. Xiaoyin was overjoyed. After receiving his last few bonuses, he happily went to the grassland. The couple went to retire together. Their child, Xia Xiaoma, was still in the hands of Coach Li. It was expected that he would play in the competition next year. At the very least, Red Jujube could have a second child. The children would be 3 years apart. It was great. At this time, Shuelai had also graduated and was very busy in his first year of work. Jia Sang was still in school and did not have much time to take care of the two horses. The two young people discussed and actually sent the horses back to the grassland and let them play with the wild horses. It was great to be left alone. Yolashanda smiled and had mixed feelings. Love can really disappear. In the past, they were afraid that the horses would have tooth decay if they did not brush their teeth. Now, they were sent back to the grassland because they were busy with work and school. Very good. They would not be able to see them for half a year. This time, Shuelai and Jia Sang were not afraid. They were prepared to let the horses go. They had trackers and other things to follow them at any time. In fact, work and school were not the reason. They just knew that horses loved freedom. No matter how big the horse farm in the manor was, it was not a grassland. There was not a single horse that did not yearn for the grassland. If that was the case, why should they imprison the horses in the name of love? After making sure that the horses had the ability to survive independently, they did so. When it was cold or hot, they brought them back to live for a few months. They fed them well and fattened them up. When the weather was good, they let them go out again. They treated them like family and thought about the horses from the horses' standpoint. Their friend Xia Yin also lived such a life. She was as happy as a fairy. Once, Xia Yin's child, Xia Xiaoma, won the first prize in the competition. Coach Li specially brought Xia Xiaoma to visit his family. Later, Xia Xiaoma had a younger sister. Yolashanda called her Xia Xiaomei. She was different from the older brother who grew up in the city. Xiaomei grew up in the grassland and occasionally went to the city. Alisanda treated his niece very well. He was willing to share the delicious food with Xiaomei and also the beautiful things with Xiaomei. For example, when Jia Sang came to the grassland to visit them during the holidays, Yolashanda held her hair ribbon in her mouth and begged Jia Sang to braid Xiaomei's hair. Little girls should be beautiful. During the years they lived in the grassland, it was Ao Daisai who led them. Ao Daisai seemed to know where the grass was abundant and where the weather was good. He led the wild horse herd to avoid many dangers and created a lot of hope. Because of the high survival rate of the foals, the number of wild horses grew more and more. Once, Yolashanda and Ao Daisai went back to the city for the winter. When they came back in the spring, they found that 2 foals did not survive the winter and were gone. Yolashanda was sad and depressed for a long time. Although Ao Daisai did not show it, it was also very regretful. During the winter of that year, they refused to go back because the wild horse herd had a few new foals. Perhaps they were afraid that they would come back the next spring and hear bad news again. In the blink of an eye, Jia Sang graduated. Because of the attention he received many olive branches from companies early on. But he refused all of them. In the end, he chose to join the ranks of wildlife conservation. The closest thing to his life was, of course, the wild horses in the grassland. The first thing Jia Sang did after graduation was to go back to his hometown to shoot a public service promotional video about wild horses. This was just the beginning. Later, he had a team and set up a foundation. His actions became more and more powerful. Jia Sang's most touching words were, "I'm a little stupid. I can only do one thing well in my life." Seeing Jia Sang grow from an ignorant teenager to an outstanding young man today, Yolashanda was proud and touched. The people he met were all good. Because of their existence, the world was better. Yolashanda felt that the years he spent with Jia Sang on the grassland were the most meaningful years. Unfortunately, they didn't have much time to accompany Jia Sang. Considering their health problems, they finally decided to send these middle-aged horses, who were no longer young, back to the city to retire. Yolashanda didn't want to go back. He felt that he was still very young and strong. He didn't even have a cold or fever. He could still fight with Jia Sang for another 10 years. Ao Daisai was even healthier. He could still lead the wild horse herd to a new peak. But the fact was that the wild horse herd already had a new generation of young and strong horses. They were all eager to fight for the position of the horse king. It was a good thing that the old and the new generation were replaced. Under Otis's influence, the new generation was smart and capable. Even if they all left, it would not matter. Yolashanda didn't expect that the first to leave the grassland would be Xia Yin. Because of a sudden illness, Dai Wei took them back that night and never came to the grassland again. The separation was a little sudden, but there was no other way. They were no longer at the age where they could fly whenever they wanted. It was very troublesome to go abroad. They could only video call each other and listen to each other's voices. Xia was a retired racehorse. He had been in the service longer than them, so it was not strange for him to have injuries. Fortunately, after a month of recuperation, he was full of energy again. It was just that the words unrestrained love of freedom no longer had anything to do with him. The couple brought their daughter, Xiao Mei, and lived a fat life abroad. Their simple life was very happy. Yilashanda and Ao Daisai stayed in the grassland for 2 more years. Jia Sang also drove them back to his senior's mansion to retire. The blondie in their eyes was now a very mature and stable entrepreneur. But so what? He still had to take care of their daily necessities. Their retirement days in the city were the same as before. Blondie would take them out shopping when he was free, but when he looked at them, there was always a kind of gentle and melancholy feeling. Really, Yilashanda thought, what does he mean? Ao Daisai and I are still strong. Jia Sang and his senior's relationship was as good as before. When he was free, he would come back to stay. Sometimes, he felt that Yilashanda and Ao Daisai were like a pair of sons that he and his senior raised. Because of these 2 horses, they were closer together. It was harder for outsiders to get involved. Yilashanda thought so too. He felt that as long as he and Ao Daisai were still alive, Jia Sang and Blondie would never be able to find a partner. But he did not feel guilty at all. Suddenly, on a winter night, there was news that Xia Yin had passed away. She died of a sudden heart attack. It was expected that she did not suffer much. Yilashanda cried. The day before, he had a video call with Xia Yin's family. That silly guy even slapped his mouth at him to show off his big white teeth. At that time, Yilashanda did not hesitate to slap back at him. It was just that he liked to eat sweets, so his teeth were not perfect. Ao Daisai's teeth were perfect. Of course, Ao Daisai would not make such a childish comparison. He was mature, even when Xia Yin had passed away. Perhaps in his heart, death was another beginning. Regardless of Xia Yin or his past partners, they all had a new beginning. It was just that they would not meet again. Yilashanda was an atheist, but in the end, he could not say for sure. Was there reincarnation? Perhaps his past partners all had a new beginning. It was just that they would not meet again. This way, he felt much better. Yilashanda was as happy as before. Living in the city had its benefits. He could shop and buy things from time to time. No matter what he liked, he could have it. This was the benefit of earning a pension when he was young. Not to mention that his boyfriend was rich, the breeder was also rich. Yilashanda, I'm a winner in life. If there were equestrian competitions around the city, Shuelai would bring them to watch. But sometimes the weather was too hot. The pampered Yilashanda could not withstand the heat. Hence, he would only watch the indoor competitions and not the outdoor ones. Ao Daisai was not interested in equestrian competitions, but he liked to accompany Yilashanda outside. No matter how much time had passed, Yilashanda would always be like a child. He was eager to try everything he saw. He was so happy. However, there was a price to pay for his recklessness. Finally, Yilashanda fell while playing outside and fractured his leg. The breeder and Ao Daisai were so anxious that they hurriedly sent him to the hospital for an x-ray. Look, it was a fracture. It was very clean. Bandage it up and bring him back to recuperate. And remember, during the recuperation period, it was best not to move around. Yilashanda could not accept it. It was not like he had not fallen lightly like this before. How did he end up with a fracture? As the saying goes, it takes 100 days to recover from a serious injury. Boo-hoo! The next 100 days would be very difficult. Actually, he knew that it was not wrong to break a bone. Regardless of whether it was a human or an animal, the bones would become brittle as they aged. Ao Daisai looked at the little cutie's foreleg that was wrapped in plaster. He could not eat or sleep well. After all, he could not lick it even if he wanted to. He could only choose to believe in human medical skills. Even so, he still stared at Yilashanda's broken foreleg. Sometimes he could not control himself and would lick it a few times. Yolashanda did not know whether to laugh or cry. Idiot, this is a plaster. Can your saliva stick to it? No, Ao Daisai had gained intelligence for so many years. Why could he still not get rid of this bad habit? After Yolashanda laughed, he was still touched. The sweetness lingered in his heart for a long time. He promised that he would be obedient in the future. He would not climb up and down anymore. If he got injured, Ao Daisai would be worried. When he heard Little Bear's obedient promise, Ao Daisai felt that it was too surreal. However, he still chose to believe it. Perhaps Little Bear would keep his promise this time? Okay. Ao Daisai answered expectantly. On the other hand, Yolashanda felt guilty. Ahem, he often lied to Ao Daisai. For example, he did not tell Ao Daisai that the blonde had given him 2 popsicles. Instead, he finished them halfway. He definitely could not eat the whole thing, because Ao Daisai would definitely know that he would not forget to ask for 2 servings. Sigh, lying was so tiring. On the night of the fracture, Yolashanda's wound was swollen. It was very painful, and he could not sleep well. What happened? It was just a small fracture. Why did he have to suffer so much? Was he really old? When he woke up in the morning, the doctor gave the white horse an anti-inflammatory injection. It did not hurt at night. Yolashanda, I am indeed not old. After the fracture was healed, it was no different from before. It was just that he could not jump up and down. Also, the part where the fracture was broken would hurt a little when it was cold and rainy. It could be ignored, but would Yolashanda bear with it? He would not. He would blabber loudly. He wanted to eat ice cream, crushed ice, fried chicken, donuts, chocolate. Ao Daisai looked out of the window helplessly. It was still drizzling outside, but Yolashanda's eyelashes were not even wet. Yolashanda cried for a long time, but her boyfriend did not respond. Was there no love left? No, it was just that Ao Daisai could tell if he was really crying or not. The drizzle at night turned into a heavy rain. Yolashanda had a dream in the rainy night. He dreamed that his fate with Ao Daisai had come to an end. When he woke up, he was glad that it was a dream. However, he still cried. This time, Ao Daisai immediately comforted him. What's wrong? Does your leg hurt? Then, he hurriedly went to find the blonde to call the doctor. The doctor came and gave him some massage and treatment, but Yolashanda was still crying intermittently. Ao Daisai's heart was broken. No matter how the rain stopped, it was useless. He blamed himself. Is it still very painful? Back then, he did not look after Little Bear properly. That was why Little Bear fell. Yes. Yolashanda nodded with tears in his eyes. He did not say that he was frightened by the nightmare. He just rubbed against Ao Daisai's body and wanted to blow on his wound coquettishly. How could there be a wound? His wound had already healed. It was just that it was a little affected by the rain. However, what could Ao Daisai do? He could only lower his head and gently lick his wound. This was very comfortable. Yolashanda enjoyed his boyfriend's gentleness as he waved away the nightmare. He was a hero past his prime. He was afraid that he would leave the other party, so he dreamed of what he thought of during the day. Change to this. Yolashanda changed his leg and signaled to Ao Daisai. Don't just focus on this leg. This was also Yolashanda's leg. He could not favor one and discriminate against the other. Ao Daisai, although he did not remember that Little Bear's leg was injured. When he came here, Ao Daisai understood that Yolashanda's leg was not hurting at all. He was just using this as a pretext to make a fuss and find benefits for himself. Okay, change. However, since the benefits were not all kinds of delicious food, Ao Daisai was more than happy to lick his wound. Yolashanda, does he know that I know that he knows that I'm pretending? He probably knows, but he doesn't say it. TSK, annoying. After a week, the weather cleared up. Yolashanda was fine everywhere. Ao Daisai casually asked, "Why did you cry so much that day?" "Because I lost the money in my dream." Yolashanda did not hesitate and spouted nonsense. It was strange that Ao Daisai believed him. He immediately narrowed his eyes and exposed Little Bear. "You're lying to me again." The 2 pairs of eyes looked at each other. Yolashanda could not resist. He looked at Ao Daisai's handsome face and could not help but say the truth. Hey, what if we don't have a next life? Ao Daisai widened his eyes and stared at his partner, who seemed to be about to say some strange prophecy. It was obvious that he had a big reaction. Yelashanda quickly said, "Huh, you're really not scared. I'm just saying if it's not real." Now that he thought about it, it was because he was sick that he was anxious and uneasy. Ao Daisai raised his eyebrows. "Don't be like this. I'm really scaring you. I feel that our next life will definitely be a small animal, like a little rabbit or a little hedgehog. I want to be a little rabbit. We haven't dug a hole yet. It's a new skill." Yelashanda talked endlessly. After a while, Ao Daisai seriously said that a little rabbit was not good. He wanted to be a beast. Little Bear was not confident, but he felt that he would be a tiger in his next life. How should he put it? Beast, beast, beast. He wanted to be a beast every time. Yelashanda sighed. Ao Daisai was a straight man. Did he not know how to appreciate the cuteness of small animals? But small animals have weak survival skills, Ao Daisai thought, but he did not dare to refute directly. Anyway, it was not up to Yelashanda to decide what to do. Facing the end, Ao Daisai's heart was filled with more anticipation than disappointment. He wanted to see Little Bear regain his youthful vitality as soon as possible, but it would still be a while. After another half a year, Yelashanda's old injury on his forelimbs became diseased. The rainy spring was not in good spirits. After seeing him, the doctor told everyone to be mentally prepared. He said that the horse's time was coming. Everyone was already mentally prepared, but they were still very reluctant. Jia Sang and Shuelai put down what they were doing and decided to send Yelashanda back to Jia Sang's hometown, because Yelashanda liked it there more. Yelashanda did not care whether he could walk or where he would recuperate in the end. Yelashanda did not care either. His only request was to continue changing his beautiful hairstyle every day. Jia Sang still wanted to tie up his beautiful hair every day and pamper him like he had since he was young. Jia Sang did all these. Yelashanda felt that they were very sad. He did not want to let Jia Sang and Blondie delay his life because of his own matters. That would make him feel guilty. How about tying his hair for the last time today? As usual, Jia Sang woke up in the morning to prepare food for the two horses and then helped to comb Yelashanda's hair. He hugged Yelashanda, who could not stand up, and then went to finish his work first. "Yelashanda, wait for me. I'll come back to accompany you after I finish my work." Yelashanda tilted his head and rubbed Jia Sang's hand. After he left, he said to Ao Daisai, "Take me away. We'll go outside and not come back." Ao Daisai was a little apologetic because it was indeed very early. It was just that he was worried that the little bear would be hungry. After answering Ao Daisai, Yelashanda's sleepiness disappeared. However, he still did not want to get up. Just like that, he was carried on the other party's back lazily. Inadvertently, while yawning, he saw that two butterflies had smelled the fragrance and were flying around the hooves of his boyfriend's horse, fluttering and dancing. "Ao Daisai, look, there are butterflies on your hooves." Yelashanda's posture was strange, and he was as happy as a child. "Don't move, you're going to fall," Ao Daisai warned. "Oh," Yelashanda replied with his mouth, but his body was not obedient. Only one of his legs was hurting, but the other three legs were still as good as before. Ao Daisai did not care about him anymore. Compared to the silence, he preferred the current situation. Listening carefully, there was a cute and familiar sound of bells in the wind. It was Yelashanda's head ornaments colliding. Ding ding dang dang, ding ding dang dang. End of main text. The author has something to say. Apart from tomorrow's update, I will first write about the panda. Yelashanda and Ao Daisai will be together forever. Due to the first version of the ending of the main text, I have received intense feedback from everyone. I have been thinking and coming up with a way to deal with it. I was even flustered and did not think of it at all. First of all, I would like to sincerely apologize to everyone. Next, I will talk about how I came up with this idea. The biggest reason is that the ending of every unit is the same as that of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Therefore, the ending is written in the same way. But after reading so many comments, I finally understood what everyone's focus was. I went back and looked at it again and again. Indeed, my arrangement was not very appropriate. I cannot shirk this responsibility. One reason is that I was limited by the ideas I had long ago. Another reason is that I met with a very sad event in the 3D world. My mood was more or less affected. I did not intentionally deceive everyone. How could I not love them? My phone is filled with their beautiful pictures, but I haven't shown them to everyone yet. Every day, when I open my eyes and close my eyes, I see Alexander and Otis' lives. They fill my life even more thoroughly. Chapter 267, we've been laughing all the way. Everyone has feelings for Alexander and Otis, and I feel the same when I read your comments. I didn't lie to everyone on purpose. It's my fault that I didn't think about the ending well. I apologize again and declare that I didn't lie to everyone on purpose. I didn't think about the ending well, and I've been trapped by the current state of the novel. In the future, I will also post this on Weibo. I will also post the reason why I am not in the right state. I am sorry for making everyone sad. I do not dare to ask for the continuation of the story. The ending was not written well and ruined everyone's feelings along the way. I'm responsible for it. I apologize again. Xiao Qi decided to wait up there and make sure that there was no rescue before trying to climb down by himself. However, he first had to overcome the incoordination problem caused by his unfamiliarity with pandas after becoming a panda. 5 kilometers away, a black and white furry adult panda woke up on the hillside and shook its dizzy head. He sat there in a daze. Before he could figure out everything around him, he heard a familiar call. It was his little cutie calling his name. The frequency was full of anxiety and helplessness. It seemed like it was in danger. The panda got up from the ground and hurriedly ran in one direction. However, just as he moved his thick and fat limbs, he fell with a plop. The round panda rolled down the hillside. Fortunately, he was agile and immediately grabbed a rock with his claws to stabilize his body. Now, his head was no longer dizzy and his vision was clear. Ao Daisai, who had transitioned from the grassland to the mountains, immediately understood that he had not become a beast. However, now is not the time to talk about this. He retracted his foot and stepped on the point of strength, making an agile movement that did not seem like something a panda could do. With his jump, he rushed up. From the back, he looked like a big black and white glutinous rice ball, moving quickly in the forest. The feeling of the meat bouncing on his body was very familiar. Ao Daisai was not unfamiliar with it. After all, it was not his first time being a bear. After running for a while, he realized that he had forgotten to respond to Yolashanda because he was too anxious. Ao Daisai was annoyed and comforted the other party, whose voice seemed to be a few degrees weaker. Yolashanda, I'm here. Yes, Xiao Qi was almost tired from shouting. His big face was leaning against the tree, looking like he had nothing left to live for. Suddenly, he heard Ao Daisai's response, and his eyes lit up. Ao Daisai. Ha ha, great. So my boyfriend is just next to me. Xiao Qi was so happy that his legs were shaking. This time, the soles of his feet were not cold or numb. Ao Daisai was like his backbone. With Ao Daisai around, this small broken tree was nothing. He was not even afraid of the Oriental Pearl Tower. Although Ao Daisai was already very fast, he was not a polar bear after all. He was just a panda that could be carried by 2 hands. It would still take some time for him to run 5 kilometers. Xiao Qi sat on the branch and waited. Finally, he saw a black and white figure in the distance. The way the other party ran over made him finally understand why pandas were called gun. It really looked like it was rolling over. Ao Daisai, you are so cute. On the way, Ao Daisai almost fell. He had no prejudice against the word cute, but he felt that cute was more suitable to describe Yolashanda. Where are you? He kept running, but he did not see the other party. Go a little further. Do you see a clump of green bamboo? There's a very, very tall tree next to it. Yulishanda said with a sobbing voice. I am on the tree. Ao Daisai looked up in shock. How should he describe that tree? It went straight into the sky. There was a small black and white ball on the branch. Of course, it was not that exaggerated, but he could still tell that it was a panda. Ao Daisai had not said a harsh word to Yulishanda for hundreds of years, but this time he could not help but put on a blaming tone. It is very dangerous up there. Why did you run to such a dangerous place? Also, Ao Daisai remembered that Yulishanda had never liked to climb up trees because she could not come down. Oh, I didn't climb up. Xiao Qishi cried and felt wronged. I woke up and found myself on a tree. Is it my fault? Ao Daisai. Thinking about how he woke up on a hillside, it was understandable. What should he do now? There was still a way. It would be easier if Ao Daisai appeared. Xiao Qishi hugged the tree trunk and looked at a village at the foot of the mountain in the distance. He instructed Ao Daisai, there is a village at the foot of the mountain. Go there and find someone. Ask them to find firefighters. That was the only way. Find someone to help. Ao Daisai stood still, a little hesitant. They were wild animals now. He did not know if humans would hurt them. Xiao Qishi quickly said, No, we are national treasures now. Humans will not hurt us. Only then did Ao Daisai remember that humans seemed to like pandas very much. Moreover, they liked pandas crazily. All right, he instructed Yulishanda. Then stay up there obediently. Don't move. Xiao Qishi. Okay. The key was that he did not dare to move. Ao Daisai went down the mountain. At the foot of the mountain was not a primitive village, but a combination of a small town and a village. They were not far away. Instead of looking for villagers who were closer, it was better to go directly to the town to find firefighters. Ao Daisai walked on the main road and met a villager driving a motorcycle. The villager did not hurt him. Instead, he walked far away from him and took out his phone to take pictures of him. Ao Daisai was worried about the little cutie on the tree. He did not have time to stop and be a star. He hurried along the main road and went straight to the town. When he passed by the village, some villagers thought that the panda was looking for food, so they took out food from their houses. Ao Daisai thought that the little bear would probably like this treatment when he came down from the tree. The author has something to say, an apology written in the front. I did not think about the ending of the main text last night. I continued to write the ending of the previous 6 units. The tears were too sad and made everyone feel uncomfortable. Last night, I rewrote a more suitable ending. This was the original idea of the ending. My original idea was that after the little bear and Ao Daisai experienced 7 lives, they would no longer be reincarnated. The main text ended. Ao Daisai dreamed of the future. There was a tiger that they wanted to be, and so on. After waking up from the dream, they would return to the North Pole and meet again at the place where they first met. This was the idea of a big turnaround. My original idea was to express this idea. Some friends might have misunderstood and thought that I wrote 1 dead and 1 crazy. After the readers pointed out the unreasonable parts, I also deeply agreed and realized that there was a problem with my original idea. I am very sorry. I am sorry to everyone. Last night, I changed the final version too. Little Bear and Ao Daisai went through 7 big worlds, continued to be reincarnated in 7 small worlds, and finally returned to the North Pole to meet as the final and complete ending. The above is all my idea of the ending. I apologize again for the description of the first chapter. I did not prepare well and communicate with the readers and other things that I should have done, causing everyone to feel uncomfortable. I will finish the rest of the chapter properly. There are about 300,000 words in addition to the chapter, and each unit is about 50,000 words. Specifically, the panda, tiger, parrot, leopard, sheep, and so on mentioned before. Also, everyone said that I continued to write for the sake of lousy money. I want to say that if you have written or worked before, you should know. If I didn't love this thing, if I didn't love my protagonist, I wouldn't have written so many words. If I hated them, I might not have been able to write a chapter. As for my original ending, it was my mistake. It was my mistake. I corrected it and changed the bad ending in the first place. Please continue to supervise and correct it. They recorded the story of using the basket to save the panda and posted it on their WeChat moments. Yolashanda, who had survived the disaster, was eating the apple to calm himself down. However, he was not a stingy person who would eat alone. After taking 2 bites, he sent it to Ao Daisai's mouth for her to take 2 bites. Apples were rare in the wild, and this was the only one. Ao Daisai could not bear to eat too much, so she just took a small bite. When she saw that the firefighters who saved her were taking photos, Xiao Qishi generously turned around and posed. She was too cute. The fire chief elbowed his colleague next door. "Do you have any more apples? Hurry up and take them out." It was too pitiful for 2 pandas to share an apple. They could not bear to see it. The colleague quickly searched his body and blamed himself. There are no more apples, but there are a few Snickers bars and candies. When they were on a mission, they sometimes did not have time to eat. These could be used to replenish their blood sugar. Now that the mission was completed, they left all the food for the panda and his son before they left. Xiao Qishi was speechless. Of course, he did not know what humans were thinking. He only saw the Snickers bars and candies. When the firefighters went down the mountain, he even sent them off. Then, he came back and threw himself into Ao Daisai's arms. It was great that he was with Ao Daisai again. Whoa, the wind is so strong up there. I'm so scared. Actually, it was not scary after he got used to it. However, this did not conflict with him acting coquettishly in front of Ao Daisai. "It's okay, good boy." Ao Daisai kissed him and then peeled candies for him to eat. The panda's teeth were very flexible when peeling things. When the candies fell into his mouth, the sweet taste immediately spread on his taste buds. Ao Daisai licked a few times and then put it into Yolashanda's mouth. He also liked to eat candies, so he licked Yolashanda's mouth a few more times. "If you want to eat, then peel one. Don't take the one in my mouth." Yolashanda was angry. He could have no principles in front of Ao Daisai, but he could not back down on this. Ao Daisai licked his mouth resentfully. It was obvious that he was hungry now, but he still did not know how to hunt. Why not ask the smart Yolashanda? "What do we eat?" Good fellow, they were indeed 2 animals. After being separated by life and death, they did not talk about the past or talk sweet nothings. They only cared about eating. "Bamboo." Xiao Qishi sat on the ground and turned his head. He pointed at the green bamboo with his finger. There were both young and old bamboos. Ao Daisai could eat whatever he liked. Ao Daisai blinked his dark eyes. Ah, it was vegetarian again. It seemed that pandas were indeed animals that ate bamboo. However, he was not a pure panda. Besides bamboo and bamboo shoots, he would definitely find other food in the mountains. For example, honey.